Welcome to Identifying Luck for Mario Party Island Tour. It is here we will learn how to best improve our odds of winning at the only Mario Party game where the main objective on most boards is to reach the end first, not collect something. While I normally introduce our bonus stars at this point, they are currently taking a well-deserved vacation and will be with us when we cover the next title. It makes sense why they're gone in this one, considering the win condition for each board, save a couple, has nothing to do with collectibles at all. Our spaces for this title are Back, Banzai Bill, Booster, Bowser, Danger, Dash, Dead End, Event, Free-for-all, Green, Item, Just Right, Kamek, Lucky, Piranha Plant, Safe, Scramble, Switch, Switch Place, Unlucky, and Warp. While I would just love to organize these in a neater way, it's a little hard to, considering that only one of them shows up on all of the boards. The green space, which still does nothing by the way. Every other space only shows up on certain boards. We'll extensively cover the ones that are more general and appear on more than one board, whereas the ones that require a lot of context will be covered briefly, followed by me saying the name of an Italian food as defined by Wikipedia, which translates to, this space will be covered in depth during its part on the board section. Alright, here we go. Backspace only shows up on Kamek's Carpet Ride and Shy Guy's Shuffle City. Landing on one will cause you to move back however many spaces the number on the space indicates. This amount goes from -1 all the way to -4. When you're moved back, you will not activate the space that you land on, which is made very clear in this title since the new space you move onto will be grayed and crossed out. Anytime this happens, no space activation. Kamek's Carpet Ride has you selecting cards with numbers on them, allowing you to move the exact space count you desire, with finishing the board only being possible if you land exactly on the final space. Now, if the backspaces on this board had numbers that were lower, like 1s or 2s, then they could actually be helpful in adjusting how many spaces you are from the end so that you can use certain cards of yours to nail the goal. But unfortunately, these backspaces are much too far away and send you too far back for them to be useful. Shy Guy's Shuffle City's backspaces have slightly higher use cases, where if you have the Bowser card in your inventory, which prevents you from winning the game, you could purposely land on one of these backspaces to stall your turn out in hopes that you can trick one of the other players into taking it from you. Banzai Bill space only shows up on Banzai Bill's Mad Mountain. Landing on this space, of which there is only one of, will launch Banzai Bill to everyone's demise that is in his path. Spaghetti. Booster space only shows up on Rocket Road. Landing on this space will grant you a single booster. These guys are incredibly necessary to win the game on this board. Lasagna. Bowser space only shows up on Perilous Palace Path and Bowser's Peculiar Peak. The Bowser events will still show up on Shy Guy's Shuffle City via the Bowser Penalty event. Encountering this will cause Bowser to show up, who will spin his ever so trusty, untimable roulette that has 4 options out of many that can show up. Advance a certain number of spaces, only shows up on Perilous Palace Path and Bowser's Peculiar Peak. A strange one, considering that on Perilous Palace Path, your win condition is reaching the end of the board, so this actually helps you. But there's a catch, of course. You've got to be in last place, still nice of Bowser regardless, but don't give him props just yet, because this event can show up on Bowser's Perilous Peak, where, let's just say, moving forward isn't as desired. Go back a certain number of spaces. Now this feels more like his style. Like I said before, considering that reaching the end of Perilous Palace Path is your win condition, being sent back spaces is not something you want. If the amount of spaces he'd send you back would send you outside the Bowser zone on this board, then he'll actually reduce the amount so that you still remain within it like the villain he is. There are items on this board that let you switch places with a single opponent or switch everyone's spaces, so you may end up in a better position a few moments later, but overall this isn't a nice event. Inversely, on Bowser's Perilous Peak, being sent back isn't that bad, but we'll of course clarify on why later. Get 1 or 2 free items. Only appears on Perilous Palace Path, but only if you're in last place. This act of generosity is incredible, especially because there's no limit to what item you can get. I'd say that landing on a Bowser space while in last place on this board is a safe bet for helping out your game, considering he can advance your space count, give you these items, or potentially have everybody trade items. It only shows up on Perilous Palace Path. Here, he'll have all the players trade items with one another. What's odd here about the way he does it is that it's 2 pairs of players trading with one another instead of there being a big pool of items that get distributed. Huh. Regardless, as I was saying before, this is yet another event that you'll likely enjoy if you're in last place, so that you can get players with better items to hand them over to you. Give last place a gift. Only shows up on Perilous Palace Path, and look at that, last place stays winning with the Bowser spaces here. Getting an item from an opponent is nice, with the only possible downside here being if you're tied with another player in last place, in which case Bowser will choose the receiver at random. But if you get this event while in last place, then Bowser will be the one to give you an item. This last place love just doesn't stop. Imitate Bowser's voice. This one activates the utter nonsense minigame and selects Bowser, where all of the players must give their best impression of him, and whoever does the worst gets punished by being forced to move forward 10 spaces. I'm pretty sure this event only shows up on Bowser's Peculiar Peak, but I haven't been able to verify that. If it shows up anywhere else, then I imagine the only change to the event would be that the punishment would suit the board better. Switch places with someone only shows up on Bowser's Peculiar Peak. This is selected via a predetermined roulette, and how much you desire this will completely depend on your position. Not like you can influence it though, so I'd rather not bet on it. Warp to last place. Not a big deal on Shy Guys Shuffle City, again because of how short the board is anyways, and how in some cases you may not want to reach the end just yet if you're holding on to a Bowser card. I'd say that Bowser spaces are definitely something you want to shoot for when in last place on Perilous Palace Path, and something you want to avoid on Bowser's Peculiar Peak or Shy Guys Shuffle City. Danger space only shows up on Banzai Bill's Mad Mountain, puts you at risk of getting hit by the Banzai Bill. Ravioli. Dash space only shows up on Perilous Palace Path, Starcross Skyway, Kamek's Carpet Ride, Shy Guys Shuffle City, and Bowser's Peculiar Peak. Landing on one will cause you to move forward the number of spaces depicted on the space. There's no roulette, it's nice, simple, and straightforward. Just like with backspaces, you will not activate any spaces that the dash spaces move you onto. With the win condition of most boards being that you must reach the end of them, you'll almost always be happy to land on one of these guys. I say almost here because there are some select situations where they may cause frustration, such as on Kamek's Carpet Ride at the end of the Orange Mansion map here, where you may have wanted to be exactly 6 spaces away from the goal instead of 5, where the dash space is now moving you. Other than in these niche cases, dash spaces are gonna be your friend. Dead End space only shows up on Perilous Palace Path, Shy Guys Shuffle City, and Bowser's Peculiar Peak. These are spots on a board where you'll be forced to stop and play an event. If it's a dead end space that's not at the end of the board, then clearing it will allow you to move whatever remaining spaces you have left, with all the other players able to cross the space freely as well. Not clearing it will cut your space count short, and everyone else on the board will have a chance to take their own crack at it, even you again, if the event has still not been cleared by the time it's your turn once more. If it's a dead end space that is at the end, then clearing it will win you the game. Probably. This will make more sense later. Event space, which I'll refer to as happening space probably, only shows up on Shy Guys Shuffle City and Bowser's Peculiar Peak. Landing on one will cause an event to occur, of which we'll cover extensively in the board section. Free-for-all space only shows up on Perilous Palace Path, Starcross Skyway, and Rocket Road. Landing on one will trigger a free-for-all minigame, where the rewards vary depending on what board you're playing and your placing. This affects how important the space itself is, where on a board like Perilous Palace Path, getting to choose one of the 3 items first is nice, and on a board like Rocket Road, whoever wins the minigame may very well have just won the entire game. No pressure if you land on it there. Item space only shows up on Perilous Palace Path. Landing on it will grant you one of the items that the board can contain at random. Risotto. Just Right space only shows up on Kamek's Carpet Ride. This is a space that you have to land exactly on to proceed. Pizza. Kamek space only shows up on Kamek's Carpet Ride. Landing on it will cause Kamek to show up, who will cause one of his wacky events to occur. Carbonara. Lucky space only shows up on Perilous Palace Path and Bowser's Peculiar Peak. Landing on one will cause something good to happen for each respective board, which we'll cover in their respective sections. Piranha Plant space only shows up on Perilous Palace Path and Kamek's Carpet Ride. Landing on one will cause a Piranha Plant to throw you back from a random number between 1 and 6. Similar to backspaces and dash spaces, you will not activate the space you get sent to. It essentially is a second backspace, with the only difference being that you will not know in advance how many spaces you're sent back before landing on it. Is it kinda silly that these two are in the same game? A little bit. Does Piranha Plant care? No. Have fun running back. Hope you're ready for this next bundle of spaces, by the way, because they're all unique to a respective board, which means we're going to be quick and Italian dishes are going to be made to order. Safe space only shows up on Banzai Bill's Mad Mountain. Being on this is good since it means Banzai Bill can't hit you. Tortellini. Scramble space only shows up on Star-Crossed Skyway. Landing on one allows you to change the order of the characters on the star stage at your leisure. Tiramisu. Star stage space only shows up on Star-Crossed Skyway. Your space count will be cut short when you reach here, and you'll receive whatever mini stars or mini stars are currently on the star stage. Mozzarella. Switch space only shows up on Banzai Bill's Mad Mountain. Landing on it will change which cannon Banzai Bill now launches out of. Switch place space only shows up on Star-Crossed Skyway. Landing on it will cause the mini-stars/mini stars at the front to switch to the last position, and for every other position's ones to move up a position. Linguini. Unlucky space only shows up on Perilous Palace Path, of which there is only one of in the entire game, with a single event tied to it. Nyauki. Warp space only shows up on Rocket Road. Landing on one will cause a predetermined roulette to appear with everyone's faces on it, and whoever you land on will be the person you get warped to. Gelato. Now is normally when we'd go over the items, which this title has a lot of, kind of. If I sound confused, it's because it's kind of weird to classify some of these as items, considering they're the default method of moving around on some boards, whereas I think of items as things that you don't have to use, but can do so if you wish. In addition, each board has its own unique set of items that is not shared by any other board, for the most part. So let's have no items section this time around and just hop straight into the boards to clear up all these spaces and item shenanigans. But before that, I need to make it very clear that board strategy in this title is limited compared to previous entries. There are only 3 junctions in the entire game where you can choose yourself which path you want to go, and all 3 of them are on Star-Crossed Skyway. Every other board is essentially a straight line, where the occasional junction is just hiding in a hole for a moment, completely random, so not in your control, or semi-random depending on what items you have in your inventory, which we'll get to later. All in all, junction-based board play is not really the focus here. It's all about making the best plays possible with the board's unique gimmick in mind, so if this board section ends up being on the shorter side, then that's why. We've taken our morning constitutional down the Perilous Palace Path. Here's the space lineup. The amount of item spaces that are here is staggering, but before we get into them, let's go over this board's rules. Here, everyone is racing to the finish by rolling a standard 1 through 6 dice block. If you have a bonus dice block in your inventory, then it will automatically be used when you roll your standard dice block, and all the numbers will be added together. Quick thing to note here is that you can roll your dice block either by pressing A or by flicking it up from the bottom screen to the top screen. There are no physics shenanigans you can do here to get the number you want. The result is unfortunately predetermined. You earn bonus dice blocks by playing a minigame that occurs at the beginning of each turn, except for the first turn. First place gets a gold dice block, which rolls 1 through 6, second gets a silver dice block, which rolls 1 through 3, third gets a bronze dice block, which rolls 1 through 2, and fourth place gets nothing. I feel the need to clarify again that these bonus dice blocks are automatically used as soon as you roll with them in your inventory, so no holding on to one for later. In addition to this mechanic, we've got a whole slew of items that appear on just this board, of which you can only hold up to 2 of. If you're given a third, then you'll have to discard whichever item you like from what you've got. You can gain them at random by either landing on one of the many item spaces that can be found on the board, or through a minigame that showed up as a result from someone landing on a free-for-all space. In these minigames, the rewards are a set of 3 items chosen at random from the list. If you get first place, you get first pick. Second place gets second pick, third place is left with the remainder, and fourth place gets nothing. Depending on what layout of items are available, second place or even third place may not be so bad, especially if your opponents aren't fully aware of how useful one or some of the items may be at this stage in the game. You should still be trying your hardest to win the minigame regardless, but it is a silver lining if your placement isn't good. The Dash Mushroom adds 3 to your roll. This is a nice, reliable item that you can use in most situations without worry in order to make some good distance. It's the Golden Dash Mushroom, which adds 5 to your roll, that you want to be a bit more careful about, considering your space count can be cut short under certain circumstances. This is doubly true for the Superstar, which multiplies your dice roll by 2. The fact that this item runs on multiplication means you should absolutely save it for when you get a 1 through 6 golden dice block, so you have potential to roll the highest possible numbers of 10, 11, and 12, and have those values doubled to hoof it through this board with ease. If the game's nearing its end though, and you just can't secure a first place minigame win for a golden dice block, then you can still move a lot of spaces with just a silver one. You might expect the Superstar to make you impervious to all other items, but nah, everything still works. It's just a movement doubler. When I'd use this item as quickly as possible is when another player has a Lakitu Leech. This item functions like the plunder chest from early Mario Party titles, where you select an opponent of your choosing and receive one of their items at random. Given that opponents can hold up to 2 items this time around, your odds are 50-50 of getting what you want at worst, which ain't half bad. Target items to steal are the Superstar, which is great in any open field position, and the Crazy Kamek and Chaos Kamek if you're far ahead in the game and don't want your position swapped. When you use a setback shell on an opponent, it'll send them back 2 spaces, whereas a backwards bill will send them back 5 spaces. In most cases, it'll be a pretty clear decision on who you should be targeting with this item, whoever's the furthest ahead, but you need to take a good look at each player's inventory to see who's really in the best position, because if the front runner has no items, but the player a little bit behind them has a Superstar, then yeah, target second place instead. Using a lightning score striker on any opponent will subtract 3 from their total roll at the end, not any earlier. So if you thought you could minus a Superstar opponent before they roll to reduce how much they double the roll by, then you'd be mistaken. It does it at the end. Subtracting 3 may not sound like all that much, but recall that the dice blocks here roll from 1 through 6, and if your target doesn't have any crazy bonus dice blocks, then you can make it so there's a high chance that they roll onto any bad spaces in front of them, or if they roll a 2 or lower, make them go backwards. This will still let them land on any spaces behind them though. The Crazy Kamek will let you switch your placement with another player at random, words straight from Kamek's mouth, yet he has you roll a roulette which may feel timeable, but alas, the result is predetermined, so he was not lying about that random bit. Only use Crazy Kamek if you have a lot to gain on average from using it. Obviously, don't use him if you're far ahead. Try your best to keep it when you have a good chance of just ruining someone's day and catapulting yourself to the end. Chaos Kamek is a rare item that occasionally shows up in the free-for-all space item pool and is occasionally given to 4th place when the front runner is nearing the end. The latter of which is an incredibly cruel scenario, considering that this item will switch all players' placings at random. Need I remind you that the flat-out win condition on this board is reaching the end, clear as crystal, meaning that this item can obliterate first place's position with little counterplay available to them. It's for this reason why you want to hold on to a Lakitu Leech and not use it, so that if a player obtains a Chaos Kamek, you can make a steal attempt to prevent a disaster from happening. Now, of course, you don't want to pass up on the opportunity of using your Lakitu Leech to steal a really good item like a Superstar, in which case go for it, but you should stay away from lesser item steals so that you can guard yourself against losing the game by cheese at the final stretch. Alright, it's a good thing we went over all these items because now we can get into more specific item use cases as we go over the board. The first section is 9 spaces long, or I guess 10 if you count the space you need to reach the end of it. There are 3 item spaces populating this area, meaning it's pretty likely you'll get something in your first couple rolls. We've also got a couple of chunky dash spaces that throw you forward here, but the main point of interest is the first challenge time event when you reach this thwomp. There are 3 buttons and only one of them will bring down the drawbridge, whereas the other 2 will result in thwomp flattening you like a pancake. If you happen to choose the correct button, then you'll be allowed to move your remaining space count onward. But if you choose a wrong button, then your movement will be cut short no matter how many spaces you have left, and you'll start your next turn on the green space right before this event. When a player drops the drawbridge, it'll stay that way for everyone, and if a wrong button is selected, it'll be removed from future selections from any players that encounter the event next. So you can rest assured that this party will eventually get moving, even if everyone gets really unlucky with their selections. Your space count getting cut short on incorrect selections here is a big reason why I would not recommend using any movement items unless you're guaranteed to hit the correct button to move on, or if the drawbridge is already down. The last thing you want to do is roll a crazy high number just to get stopped in your tracks. Up ahead, we've got 2 event spaces, happening spaces, whatever you want to call them, where you'll get launched out of a cannon and move up 10 to 11 spaces, which is amazing on a board where your win condition is reaching the end. Not to mention that there is, well, 2 of them, so your odds of landing on one is higher. I'd even go as far as to still not use your movement items yet, just in case you land on one of these happening spaces. If you do, great, and if you don't, then it's not a problem. Feel free to use your movement item if it's a mushroom specifically. This will make sense in a moment since we first need to cover the second challenge time event on this board, the Goomba Tower. The left path leads down the main route, whereas the right path leads to the Bowser Zone, where there's a Bowser space, a Piranha Plant space, and quite a lot of item spaces. So it's not too bad to end up here, but you are required to move more spaces to reach the end than the much nicer left path. As you may have expected though, this is no ordinary junction. The Goomba Tower will spin at blistering speeds, and you'll be given the option of choosing when to stop it, making you think you have a choice in the matter, but unfortunately, you do not. It will slow down of its own accord, either banishing you to the Bowser Zone or letting you take the nice path. One big detail here is that if you go down the main path, then you'll be allowed to move your remaining spaces, but if you go down into the Bowser Zone, then your space count will get cut short. This is why I recommended earlier that you only use a mushroom when on the way to this junction. It gives you a small boost, just enough to hopefully reach it, but not such a crazy boost that rolling a super high number can end up with you disappointed as you're cut off and thrown into the pit. If you're here though, then by all means use your movement items to blast ahead. The Piranha Plant space, which has potential to throw you back some spaces, is something that you'll be confident you won't land on until you do, so don't get caught on it, or the Bowser space, and just use your movement items to save yourself the trouble. Should you land on the Bowser space and get the event that would send you back some spaces, then as said before, Bowser will not be nice and eject you from the Bowser Zone. He'll just reduce the amount of spaces you get sent because it's meaner to keep you here. This is easily one of the best spots to use your crazy Kamek in an effort to switch your bad position with another player's much more likely good one. One incredibly funny yet optimal play you can do in this section is setback shelling or backwards billing an opponent that's ahead of the Goomba Tower, causing them to land behind it and forcing them to encounter it again. You may think that if they came from the Bowser Zone, that sending them backwards would cause the game to throw them back on the path they came from, but nope, it prioritizes sending them back on the main route. So no matter which direction they came from, they will have to deal with this stupid Goomba Tower again. It's for this reason that you want to be careful yourself when approaching these few spaces ahead of the Goomba Tower. Ideally, you'd be using a movement item to ensure you're far enough along to where said move wouldn't affect you. Landing on the happening space next to the Chain Chomp will cause it to wake up in a frenzy, chasing you and any other players in the rut to this green space. It's not the most terrible event to encounter considering it's just 6 spaces, but repeatedly encountering it can be a huge bother, which is why using a blooper chopper on an opponent here to increase their odds of activating this event can be a huge pain for them, or even just throwing them back behind the Chain Chomp if they've already passed it. thing is, if they win the bonus minigame and get a gold dice block, it's likely that they'll get enough support from the extra dice block to where this move doesn't even matter, which brings us to how you should handle these minigames. While it's great to get first place and its reward of the gold dice block, second place's reward ain't half bad either. And if you let a big threat get second place and its corresponding prize, then you could still be in a bad position. What I'm trying to say here is that in some cases, getting first place won't be enough to make a big difference in getting an edge over a troublesome opponent. You'll want to ensure that they get third or ideally fourth place in the minigame while you get first for maximum benefit. Achieving this will obviously depend on the minigame, which we'll go over in its respective section, but just keep in mind how important targeting is in minigames from this point onward. One quirky detail of the minigames in this title, by the way, is that if you tie in a minigame, then the placings will be determined by the tying players rolling dice blocks. This means that we can't rely on tying with our opponents in minigames for first place like in previous titles unless we want to leave it up to luck, and I'm not much of a fan of that, so yeah, minigames are pretty important, which I will definitely reiterate multiple times because of how pivotal they are. When a player moves past this chain chomp space, Toad will read out the current standings at the beginning of the next turn. He'll grant the player in last place a random item out of the entire selection. They'll also be the one that chooses the minigames out of 3 from that point onward. This is a huge advantage to have considering the rewards you can receive for getting first. Doubly so if you're in last, but aren't far enough behind to be out of the running. The very next space is a dash space, followed by a couple item spaces and another dash space. Any items you receive from the spaces here should not be held for very long. You're around 10 spaces away from the goal, and in some lucky circumstances, you could be on your way there your very next turn. Find a target for the item you receive if it's one of those, or immediately use any items that boost your roll. The worst case scenario here would be for an opponent behind you to either Lakitu your item away, or even worse than that, Crazy Kamek or Chaos Kamek your position away. These are by far the doomsday items to look out for at this stage. Use your items immediately to reach the end as quickly as possible, for when you do, you'll hit a dead end and encounter the Womp. Surprise, there's another challenge. At the beginning, its HP will be 6. You'll roll a 1 through 6 dice block and deal that amount of damage to it. If you happen to roll 6 in your first turn, then congratulations, you win the game. But if you roll anything less than 6 on this first encounter, you'll deal that much damage and your turn will end on the dead end space where you must make another attempt on your next turn. The damage you deal to the Womp is done for everyone, by the way, so someone running in and snatching it is absolutely possible. An advantage you have by encountering the Womp from the dead end space, though, is that your roll to deal damage is now determined by what your movement roll would have been. Simply put, bonus dice blocks and items will now count towards your damage roll, so if you have any, then use them for a pretty much guaranteed win. Overall, Perilous Palace Path ironically has very little to do with pathing strategy and a lot more to do with item strategy. Always be aware of what your opponents have and what their options are before deciding whether or not now is a good time to use what you have. We've scaled up to Banzai Bill's Mad Mountain. Here's the space lineup. Yeah, it's not a lot, but there's a reason for it. Whoever reaches the ending first wins, but there's a catch. Everyone rolls a dice block numbered 1 through 5, with the 6th phase featuring Banzai Bill. He'll launch anytime a player rolls him, and when he does, all players in his path will get knocked back to either the start if it's the lower section, or the switch space if it's the upper section. Banzai Bill can only hit players that are on red colored spaces. If you're on the switch space or any of the blue safe spaces, then even if he launches, you'll be safe. These safe spaces are found in holes that you're given the option to enter whenever it's your last opportunity to do so. So if you have one more move remaining and there's an empty safe space above, you can enter. If there are players ahead of you already occupying safe spaces, then you can enter an earlier one instead. If you're about to move on to the next section without a safe space, then you can enter an earlier one instead as well. It's all about what your last opportunity to enter one is. In addition, once a player reaches the switch space, Banzai Bill will stop launching at the lower section of the board and switch to launching at the upper section of the board. If you're at the lower section when this happens, then you're free to proceed to the upper one without worry of Banzai Bill hitting you. Landing on the last space before the goal will automatically launch Banzai Bill. Lastly, every third turn, a move bonus minigame will begin, where first place gets plus 5 spaces, second gets plus 3 spaces, third gets plus 1 space, and fourth gets no spaces. On turn 9 though, these bonuses will change to plus 6, plus 4, plus 2, and plus 0 respectively. These bonuses are awarded in the order of placing, so even if you normally go last, you'll receive your bonus first if you get first place. Bonus movement works the same as regular movement. Once all bonus movement has been awarded, the normal turn cycle begins. The push and pull for this board is choosing whether or not you should enter a safe space or continue onward. While you might expect me to say that it depends a lot of the time, I'd argue that no, it doesn't. The safe spaces suck. Remember, there are no items on this board, no junctions, and no way to consistently roll what you want, meaning that a player rolling Banzai Bill strictly comes down to luck. Take this situation for example. You can either go up into a safe space or advance 1 space. If you were to go into the safe space and roll a 1 or a 2 your next turn, then you'll land on a danger space, which would have happened anyway had you just moved forward the previous turn. So you essentially lose a whole turn by rolling a 1 or a 2 in this scenario. Sure, you could roll a 3, 4, or 5, but if you advanced instead and rolled this count, then you could actually take advantage of the high roll and potentially reach the switch space or goal instead of -2ing your roll by taking your time exiting the safe space. Now obviously safe spaces are supposed to have this harsh movement drawback in exchange for being safe from getting hit by Banzai Bill. So what are the odds of him launching at least once in a regular turn cycle anyways? Doing the math, it comes down to 51.8%. Alright, so Banzai Bill essentially has a 50-50 chance of launching. In addition, when he launches, the most amount of spaces you can lose on the lower section is 5, and on the upper section is 7, not 8, because you can't actually land and stay on the Banzai Bill space. Keep in mind that these are the max values of what you can lose by getting hit. Usually it's lower. The odds of it happening are 50-50, so not even that much in Banzai Bill's favor, and choosing to go into a safe space loses you 2 spaces of movement anyways, along with the possibility of you rolling a 1 or a 2 where you'll be left on a danger space anyways. Maybe if Banzai Bill's odds of firing were higher, or if the lane of spaces were much longer, I could justify these safe spaces more, but given the circumstances, I'd almost always advance forward. That being said, if you're on the upper section and have the option to enter this final safe space before a bonus movement minigame plays, then do it. If you get first place, then you'll be granted plus 5 spaces and win the game without having to roll. The same is true if you enter the second to last safe space and get a plus 6 space bonus. There's a decent chance that whoever gets first here will win the game afterward should they get a great roll, so make sure you're locked in for it. Overall, Banzai Bill's Mad Mountain is going to be a very luck-filled experience no matter which way you dice it. Don't get discouraged if you just can't seem to win this one. Just focus on advancing instead of hiding in safe spaces, and when the minigame shows up, do your best to secure the huge advantage it grants. We've flown to Starcross Skyway. Here's the space lineup. Out of all the boards, it's the only one with actual junctions that let you take different routes of your own volition. Whoever collects the most mini stars by the end wins. You want to avoid mini stars since they'll take away from your mini star count. When you arrive at a star stage, you'll get mini stars from the creature in front, and the next creature will step up to the podium for whoever arrives next. When there's only one player remaining on a section of the board, they'll be automatically moved to the star stage and receive whatever's left. There are 4 sections of the board, by the way, and 4 star stages, 1 for each section. When you move to a new section, your space count will get cut off. The switch place space will force the current creature at the front of the line to the back of the line, switching up the order a bit. The scramble space lets whoever landed on it choose what the new order of the creatures is, letting you help yourself out or screw over other players. These spaces will only count for the star stage in the section they're on. The free-for-all space will cause a minigame to be played where during the first to third section of the board, the mini-star values are 3, 2, 1, and nothing respectively, whereas during the fourth section, they're 6, 4, 2, and nothing respectively. This section is determined by where the free-for-all space is landed on. Whoever lands on the free-for-all space gets to choose the minigame, making this a delightful space to target. Starting off, the first star stage has 10, 7, 5, and 2 mini-stars in that order, and it's only 8 spaces away. You'll reach this one pretty quick, what with the dash spaces lying about, and may even end up playing a minigame on the way there. No junctions or scramble spaces on this first section, so it's all luck. The second star stage has 10, 7, 5, and -2 mini-stars in that order, and it's 10 to 11 spaces away depending on which route you take at this junction. If you rolled a 1 and are ahead of most players, then head down for a speed boost and a good shot at getting a lot of mini-stars up ahead. If you're behind, then head up to switch the creature's positions instead. If you rolled a 2, then absolutely head down for the free-for-all space so you can choose a minigame fit for you. These spaces in general are fantastic to land on due to the healthy surplus of mini-stars they grant, along with your agency in choosing what's played. There's a scramble space directly before the second star stage, and while you may want to make things bad for whoever has the most mini-stars currently, I'd keep in mind any players that crush minigames and consider their potential to snowball mini-stars as the game goes on. The third star stage is a bit more negative, with -7, -5, and -2 mini-stars in that order, with 2 mini-stars right afterward. It's 8 to 9 spaces away depending on which path you take. Most of the time, if you rolled a 1, you'll want to head up here for minigame goodness. A 2 or 3 headed down lets you switch the creatures around, which will likely let whoever's ahead of you catch a break, with the higher mini-star creature moving to the back. A 4 headed up is kind of silly because you'd get +2'd forward, so consider it if movement is your goal, but you'll probably want to land on the minigame space downward instead. Like before, there's a scramble space directly in front of the star stage. Here is where I would straightforwardly target whoever's the threat right next to me, considering that the game is nearing its end. The 4-star stage has 10, 7, 5, and -7 mini-stars in that order, and it's 10 to 11 spaces away depending on which route you take. This is where the minigame bonuses jump to 6, 4, 2, and 0 as well. This last section is important due to how big of a swap on mini-stars can occur. At the junction, instead of trying to give yourself the +10 mini-stars, focus on avoiding the -7 mini-stars, even if it means you only get +5. You would much rather a foe eat the -7 than you, so if you can land on a switch play space, then observe your foe's surroundings to see if it's worth it. The minigame spaces, as always, are great to land on here for a quick boost, and the final space before the end is yet another scramble space. When everyone reaches the end, the game's over, period. So if you land on the scramble space here, you are very likely to be deciding some placements. Check everyone's counts and where they are to choose the most optimal order. Here is where you'll want to grant yourself the most amount of mini-stars, unless a +5 to you and a -7 to the biggest threat would make a larger difference than you getting +10 and them getting +5, for example. In the former's case, that would be a 12 mini-star difference, and in the latter's case, that would only be a 5 mini-star difference. Just take your time and do the math. Overall, Star-Crossed Skyway has you constantly checking the map to figure out when switching creatures up will be optimal, and forcing you to play many minigames that are pivotal to keeping your mini-star count at an all-time high. We've blasted onto Rocket Road. Here's the space lineup. Out of all the boards, this one typically has the shortest playtime for reasons we're about to cover. Here, you use boosters to multiply the number on your dice block as you race to the finish line. You'll begin the game with 1 booster in your inventory. Landing on a booster space will grant you 1 booster. Every 3 rounds, a booster bonus minigame will be played where +3, +2, +1, and +0 boosters are handed out depending on placing. There's also the free-for-all space on this board, where Luma will take a booster from each player and have the player that landed on the space choose the minigame, with the winner gaining all of the boosters. If there aren't enough boosters taken from everyone, Luma will sweeten the deal with an extra booster or 2. Landing on any of the warp spaces will throw up a predetermined roulette that'll send you to one of the other players. Okay, each dice block is numbered 0 to 5. If you roll a 0, then you'll land on whatever space you were already on. If this happens at the beginning of the game, then Toad will feel bad for you and give you a free booster. Continue to roll a 0 at the beginning, he'll keep giving you free boosters, which isn't a bad deal. Got all that? Good, because now let's get into the implications of all this. You can add up to 4 boosters for a max multiplication value of ×5 on your next roll. Keep in mind, you roll 0 to 5, so 4 boosters will turn it into a 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25 dice block. That 25 number is kind of a big deal. Why? Well, let's take a look at the space count again. Oh, the board is only 24 spaces long. So if you hold on to the free booster you get at the beginning and get first place on the bonus booster minigame, then boom, you have 4 boosters and a 1 in 6 chance of winning the game right then and there. And that's only if you're over 20 spaces away. You'll likely be a little closer at this point. So just rolling at least the 20, a 2 in 6 chance, is enough to win the game. This is crazy. You would think that boosters would be a lot harder to obtain given these odds, but no, if you are winning minigames, you will have enough to go for a win. And go for the win you should. Any time, and I mean any time, that Toad tells you that you can potentially roll to the goal by adding enough boosters, do it. If you don't, then someone might land on the free-for-all spaces and you could lose a booster. Someone else may take a shot themselves and win before you. Just go for it. Even a 1 in 6 shot at winning the whole game then and there is incredible. The worst case scenario is rolling a 0 and wasting all those boosters, but it doesn't really matter all that much. Just build your collection back up. Do not use any boosters unless there is a chance you can roll for the win. If you actually get to make it to the second half of the board, I should note that there are 3 warp spaces at the end, and there are numbers alongside the final 10 spaces indicating how much further you have to go. This doesn't change your strategy much. In fact, it solidifies it. Why bother trying to luckily roll past the 3 warp spaces with a regular dice block when you can stock up and blast through everything? Overall, Rocket Road has gotta be one of the most straightforward boards in the franchise. Literally, win those minigames, get those boosters, and launch yourself with as many as you can, as often as you can, to secure a quick victory. We've come aboard onto Kamek's Carpet Ride. Here's the space lineup. Out of all the boards, it's the only one to have multiple variations depending on which path is taken. Here, you play your cards right to land precisely on the goal before your opponents. That means that there are no dice block rolls here. You choose how many spaces you go via cards. Random cards will randomly decide how many spaces you move between set amounts. Precision cards move you the precise number of spaces indicated by the card, and power precision cards move you forward and everyone else backward the same number of spaces. Everyone begins with a random selection of 3 cards that are known only to them. Every round, players will use one of their cards and then play a bonus card minigame to restock. First place gets first pick, second place gets second pick, and so on. So even if you come in last, you'll still get a card, meaning that everyone's card stock will be replenished each round, just with some people being more happy with their selection than others. This first section serves as a bit of a tutorial, but whoever lands exactly on one of the 2 just right spaces at the end will receive a 2 power precision card, and the rest of the game will be played on that section of the board. The other section will not be played on. We've also got the unique Kamek space to worry about. Here, he'll cause one of 4 effects. Everyone goes back a number of spaces, which can easily mess with your positioning if you had just the right card to land on a just right space. Everyone goes forward a number of spaces, which, funny enough, can be annoying for the same reason. Everyone warps to a player's space, which is also annoying for the same reason, and everyone warps to first place, which is almost always good for those in second or behind. So, yeah, most of these effects kind of do the same thing, mess with your position so the cards that you have don't really work in the way that you want them to. Everything else here doesn't occur, but I would love to hear what Kamek's joke would have been. Almost all the time, everyone's movement will be swapped a bit, but that predictability actually makes this space more valuable, not less. If someone's close to winning, then you can purposely land on the Kamek space to screw up their position. The pathway to the 2 just right spaces at the end is incredibly short at a whopping 9 to 10 spaces. Yeah, it's not much. After the first turn, someone will already be close enough to land on one, and we want that person to be you. When the game begins, take a good look at your card so you know your options. In this case, we've got a Precision 3 card, which we can use to land on the +3 dash space to go pretty far, and already we're 3 to 4 spaces away from a just right space. One thing to know is that if you overshoot a just right space, that you'll bounce back and start heading the opposite direction. You must land exactly on it to count. In this case, even a 4 through 6 random card can work if it lands on the 4, and it does, which allows us to get the reward and advance to the next stage. That being said, if you're able, you should choose to land on the orange path instead of the green one. It has more Kamek spaces and a Piranha Plant space than the green path, which is better because you're given more options to work with and against your opponents. And in this title, where board play options are rather limited, you would much prefer having more than less. This orange path has tons of dash spaces too, with the big boys being the +5s. These are your #1 target. If you're ahead at this rate, you'll want to avoid the Kamek spaces and Piranha Plant space and begin to position yourself appropriately in front of the just right space at the end of the path. Landing on it will net you the win. This entire time, you should have been picking your bonus cards from minigames strategically, but they're especially important now. Usually you don't want to double up, and you will want to think about what number you'll need after your next move. The game actually holds your hand a bit here, and will flat out tell everyone out in the open which card they should be aiming for in order to secure victory. If you can't secure victory with a card, then look at who the game is telling you can, and make sure that they lose the next minigame, or at least get a lower placing than you so that you can take what card would have been good for them. You can't view what cards the other players have, but the game will also tell on any player that has a card that at least has a chance of getting them on a future just right space. This means that they could have the exact card number to land there, or a random card that has a chance at doing it. Regardless, this is a big warning sign for you to do something about it. Your options are using a power precision card to alter their position, or look for the nearest Kamek space and land on it in hopes of changing the threat's position. If you can't do either, then make sure you notify your opponents that the threat is about to win unless they do something about it. These kinds of plays are a bit more difficult to do on the green path. Here they have the opposite of dash spaces, the back spaces, which you should obviously avoid when possible, but the issue is that there's one less Kamek space, making hurting a threat's position a little less likely. Lastly, when it comes to cards, I'd say that they all have their worth depending on your position, except for the random 1 through 6 card. It's just too wide of a net to be helpful on a board where precision is warranted. Overall, Kamek's carpet ride will have you racking your brains to figure out which cards would be good for your position and preventing other players from grabbing ones good for theirs. Think ahead to what your next position may be and watch out for the almost there notification so you know when to target a threat. We've entered Shy Guy Shuffle City. Here's the space lineup. Out of all the boards, this is the only one that requires you to have at least 3 real players to play it. You can't select it otherwise. So behold, IRL footage taken by my friend Aerozotic. I appreciate it greatly because I don't think I would have been able to do it myself. Here you draw, trade, and play cards as you race to the finish. Watch out for the Bowser card. Similar to Kamek's carpet ride, players use cards to move a precise amount of spaces, except here there are no power precision cards or random cards, just precise cards ranging from 0 to 6. At the beginning of the game, each player will be given 3 cards which will be known only to them, randomly pulled from a set of cards. When playing with 3 players, the set that's pulled from is 2 cards each of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and when playing with 4 players, the set that's pulled from is 2 1 cards and 3 cards each for 2, 3, and 4. Regardless of which variation you're dealing with, Bowser will slip in a Bowser card that you hopefully do not draw for reasons we'll get into later. At the end of every turn, after everyone's moved, a bonus card minigame will be played, with a 6, 5, 4, and 0 card given to 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place respectively when played with 4 players, and just the 6, 5, and 0 card given to 1st, 2nd, and 3rd places respectively when played with 3 players. The 5 and 6 precision cards are shiny compared to the lower values because they can only be obtained via these minigames. Starting on the 2nd turn, players will now take a card from an opponent before they move. The player that goes after you is the one you take a card from. They'll be given the option to shuffle around the cards, and there will even be one sticking out by default at times. These don't seem to indicate much of anything. At first I thought that the cards would be in ascending order by default, but that's not true. So when you're taking from someone, the best you can really do is try and read them. Ask about a certain card and look at their face to see what their reaction is. Some people are bad at hiding that it's a good card or not, whereas others are stone cold. You may find no point to this, but you really want to avoid taking someone's Bowser card. Not only will you take the weight off their shoulders, you'll then be carrying some weight of your own. After you take a card, then you'll make your card selection to move. This process will continue to repeat until the end of the game. Now let's finally talk about why the Bowser card is just so bad to carry. Every 3 turns there will come the Bowser penalty, where the person holding the Bowser card will be revealed. Bowser will then roll a random roulette on them, causing one of the usual effects like going backspaces, warping to last place, etc., except for effects that wouldn't make sense to be on this board, such as getting free items or trading items, since there's no items on this board, just cards. Once that's all done, all players will discard whatever they had in their hand and be issued 3 random cards from the appropriate set, just like what happened at the beginning of the game. And just like what happened at the start, Bowser will slip in a Bowser card that you want to hope you don't get. There's 2 key details about the Bowser card that you want to keep in mind if you're holding it. The first is that you'll have a large red Bowser icon floating around during board play. The second is that if you tap the Bowser card, then Bowser will audibly laugh out loud, revealing to everyone else that you have it. So do not tap it and make sure that your 3DS is completely hidden from everyone. Granted, you should be doing this anyway so they don't see your cards. There are multiple happening spaces around the board as well. Landing on one will randomly select one of many simple to understand effects like you advancing spaces, everyone advancing spaces, first place going back spaces, or the worst outcome, getting the Bowser card. This possibility alone is enough for you to avoid these happening spaces at all costs unless you want to bank on moving first place back a little bit. Reaching the end is not enough to actually win the game, by the way. You'll encounter the final challenge, where 2 out of 6 cards are winners and 4 are losers. They'll get randomly shuffled around, and if you choose a winner, then you win the game. But choose a loser and you'll get sent back 3 spaces, with the remaining card selection going down by 1 for everyone, not just you. But plot twist, you aren't even allowed to participate in this final challenge if you're holding the Bowser card. You'll be automatically sent back 3 spaces, and it'll become clear to everyone that you have it, leaving you to, just like before, hope that you can trick someone else into grabbing it, or just waiting until the Bowser penalty hits you. One last thing that makes the Bowser card a bummer to have is that if someone wins the game, then you'll come in last place even if you were closer to the goal than anyone else. Overall, Shy Guys Shuffle City is a mind game marathon where you'll want to observe your opponent's reactions to taking different cards, use your own appropriately to blast ahead on dash spaces, and avoid the ever so deadly Bowser card to prevent your game from getting show-stopped. We have not climbed up to Bowser's Peculiar Peak, and this is not the space lineup. Everything's backwards here, because reaching the goal first means you lose, and whoever's the furthest away when the unlucky soul loses is the one who wins. Stay as far away from Bowser as possible by rolling low numbers. Roll doubles to stay put. At the beginning of every turn, you'll play a minigame for turn order, where if you get first, then you get to roll last, and so on. In addition, your placing determines which Bowser dice blocks you get, if any, with first place getting no blocks, second getting the bonus 1 to 2 dice block, third getting the bonus 1 to 3 dice block, and fourth getting the bonus 1 to 6 dice block. Again, you do not want these blocks because they will automatically add on to your 1 to 6 dice block roll and make you get closer to Bowser. Here you want to roll as low as possible, so make sure you're still trying to win the minigame as much as usual. And before you get any bright ideas about second place being technically better because you get the 1 to 2 dice block and then you aim for trying to roll doubles to stay still, I promise you the math does not work out in your favor, you just want to go for first. There are no items for you to use here, and no junctions to take, making board play here pretty simple. At the beginning, you'll notice a lot of dash spaces. Normally they're blue, but since advancing on this board is bad, they're colored red this time around. Landing on any of the happening spaces next to the warp pipes will cause you to get launched back from 1 to 6 spaces at random, which is nice when it happens. The halfway point is the Bowser Blockade event, where Bowser will make you choose between 2 detonators. One will blow up the wall and let you move your remaining spaces, darn, whereas the other will not blow up the wall and thankfully let you remain where you are. If the latter happens, then any other player that encounters this event will be given the same scenario with the same 50-50 odds of each outcome. The wall not blowing up can absolutely occur multiple times in a row. It can just keep on going. You'll eventually see a fall though, where you'll enter the second section of the board. At this stage, the player in last place, so whoever's furthest ahead, will choose the minigame. Bowser will also add 7 Bowser spaces at this time, where landing on one can cause you to move forward a number of spaces, one of the worst results, especially if it's a high result, go back a number of spaces, usually the best result, switch places with someone, which is going to depend on others' placements, and imitate Bowser's voice, where the worst Bowser, as he puts it, will have to move plus 10 spaces forward. How delightful! Landing on any of the happening spaces on these platforms will cause you to get launched to one of the platforms close to it. In this case, we're heading forward 8 spaces, which is an awful outcome. It's not completely over when you reach the end though, because you'll still have to play the Bowser Challenge. Here, you step on the platforms and roll. The number you roll is the number of platforms Bowser knocks away. So if you roll a 1 to 3, you're safe. Roll a 4 or higher though, and you lose the game. If you're safe, then you'll remain on the space and be forced to encounter the Bowser Challenge once more. Don't worry though, the number of platforms will reset back to 3. But what you should worry about is that any bonus Bowser dice blocks you get from minigames will now count towards the roll on the Bowser Challenge, so you'll really want to get first place in this position. As said before, the winner of the board is determined by whoever's the furthest away from Bowser when last place gets launched into the stratosphere. What this means though is that if multiple players are on the same furthest space, then they'll win together on the Bowser board. Who could have expected that? Guess Bowser brings us all together at the end of the day. Overall, Bowser's Peculiar Peak is a simple lane of torture where you are given 0 agency throughout the entire board. There are 0 non-luck based decisions to make here, which means that you better be on top of your minigame performance to increase your odds of the best rolls possible. This title has 69 minigames that all have a chance to pop up in party mode. There's 69 general minigames and 0 of everything else because regular free-for-all minigames are the only type of minigames to be found in party mode. Hence, this title has the most free-for-all minigames out of all the titles thus far. There are some cases where you'll only play a single minigame or a few on a board, with the winner gaining a big advantage. Minigame skill has never been more important than now. Anytime in a minigame where you're told to use the circle pad, you're able to use the D-pad as well. In some cases, using the D-pad may feel better, whereas in others, it just wouldn't make sense to. We've got gyro minigames here, meaning they're played by moving your 3DS system around. In every one of these minigames, there's a warning that says, please pay attention to your surroundings when moving your system. Good, you should abide by that. Now, the down on the D-pad part is important since you can reset the view a bit while playing the minigame in case your camera is a bit wonky. But the second part about placing the system for a short time is only going to be possible without instantly losing if you pause the minigame and have everyone wait for you to recalibrate, which I leave up to you. Typically, D-pad down will be enough to get the job done. General minigames. Amp my style. Avoid being shocked by the amps to be the last one standing. There are 8 amps that surround you and your opponents. Touching an amp or the lightning between them will result in you being knocked out. An amp will move shortly after being struck by electricity. This happens in groups. You can see here that one pair of amps gets zapped, then another, and so on, but they do not all begin moving at the same time. They move in order of which pair was zapped first. So if you're in a tight spot, then don't feel the need to move immediately if the amp next to you hasn't been shocked yet. You have a little more time than you think. You also want to look out for which direction an amp is facing when it moves. Amps will always commit to the direction they begin moving in and will not change directions. When the timer hits 30 seconds, the camera angle will slowly start looking down on the arena, giving you a full top-down view when the timer hits 10 seconds. It does this transition slowly, so it's not something to look out and prepare for, but it's a subtle detail to be aware of. When the minigame begins, your top priority is finding the most open space devoid of players. The reason why players are a problem here is because there's collision. Said collision is so important to look out for, in fact, that characters have a unique pushing animation when moving against another player. It's actually kind of funny and should be an indicator to you that pushing your opponents is absolutely a viable strategy here, but mainly against players that are more passive and aren't as aware of their surroundings or of what pushing can do. For players that are very aware of their surroundings and like moving around a lot, you may accidentally push too much and send yourself flying into an amp, getting shocked. So pick and choose your battles when it comes to pushing. Watch which amps get shocked first, and take note of which direction amps are facing so that you can maneuver to safe spaces as best you can. Blown Hover. Race to the finish while jumping and dodging the flip panels as they appear. You and your opponents are simply moving in a straight line as you decide whether you need to not jump to be on the first layer, do a short hop to be on the second layer, or do a full hop to be on the third layer. Short hops are done by pressing the A button quickly, whereas full hops are done by pressing it for longer. You can also move left and right, but if there's a player next to you, then you'll just bump into them, stunning both you and them, preventing the two of you from jumping. This can be great in cases where a threat needs to jump, but you don't, since your lane doesn't require you to. Granted, if they jump before you make the attempt and you don't react in time, then you'll take their spot and take the hit instead. When you take a hit, you'll notice your speed meter on the left go from 5 bars, which is max speed, down to 1, which will quickly replenish over the course of a few seconds as you watch your opponents zip ahead in front of you. There aren't any boost pads or tricks you can do to catch up on your own. You've got to hope that your foes mess up, which is more likely for them to do now than you, since they'll have less time to react towards the flip panel formations than you will, since you're further behind. You can't move and jump at the same time, by the way. You're committed to a lane when jumping. The minigame layout is not the same every time. However, there are certain patterns that the game will choose from. There are 7 patterns that start from the bottom row, 6 patterns that start from the middle row, and only 1 pattern that starts from the top row. Keep in mind that all of these patterns can begin from either the left side or the right side. I'm only showing it from the left side to save space. The beginning face panel will always be right side up, but every face panel after it will indicate what direction the face panels are appearing in. Not including the mirrored versions, we can see that the amount of total empty spaces the bottom row has when adding up all the patterns together is 22, with the middle row's total being 13 and the top row's total being a staggering 45. This means that full hops are safer than short hops and not jumping combined. So if your reaction time is poor and you don't feel like studying the different patterns this minigame has, then go for a full hop. You should at least keep in mind that this is the only top row pattern, so if you're on either of the sides, then don't jump. Bob-omb Aplomb. Run and kick the bob-ombs onto your opponent's platforms before they explode. Bob-ombs will fall from the sky onto each player's platform, where touching one even a tiny bit will result in kicking that bob-omb the perfect distance to land on one of your opponent's platforms. Problem is, you've got to do a little thing called aiming. Now I know that sounds bad, but it's really not that hard. You've just got to walk into a bob-omb in the direction that you want to send it for your desired player. Obviously, you want the biggest threat out first, so absolutely keep launching as many bob-ombs towards them as you can. But one thing you cannot allow for is a single bob-omb to explode on your platform, for that will result in you losing the minigame entirely. With how many bob-ombs start accumulating as the minigame goes on, and factoring in other players sending bob-ombs towards you at varying detonation times, I prefer getting bob-ombs off my platform as soon as possible in the general direction of the biggest threat without waiting for their detonation. I personally don't see many safe opportunities to go for the waiting strat too often. For maximum safety but less offensive power, move your character in a circle to knock any bob-ombs away from you instantly. Bumper Thumper. Fire your boosters and bump the other players off the platform. Think of this one like a clunky bumper balls with walls that initially surround the arena. There are 16 of them. When a wall gets bumped into, it'll go down by half. When it gets bumped into again, it'll go down completely, allowing players to get knocked off the arena in that spot. The controls for this one are very odd. First of all, you cannot boost in the exact direction you want. You can only go in the 8 cardinal directions. Secondly, you move in the direction you want by tapping the direction you wish to go. You do not smoothly move around. It's a game of tap moving with limited directions to choose from. The boost itself that you get from moving has a quick initial blast off with lingering movement at the end in the direction you were going. As the minigame progresses, watch for where the walls start opening and quickly move yourself to where walls are behind you. The movement in this minigame, while janky, is fast, so your opportunities for escaping bad situations will be very high so long as you're looking out for them. Quick knockouts can be assured if you notice one player is knocking into another and you join in on trying to get them both out. Don't be afraid to be aggressive here, because if you see someone else trying to go for you, then eject from the situation and retreat to where some walls are. Especially in a one-on-one confrontation, you want to be careful about the angle of how you run into an opponent, since that'll affect where you bounce towards as well. If your foe is right in front of you, for example, and you spam boost in their direction, then you might find yourself getting offset a little bit and flying off the arena, so be aware of your misalignment and adjust accordingly. Buzz a fuzzy. Aim by moving your system and try to hit as many fuzzies as possible with an arrow. You do this for 3 rounds. The most amount of fuzzies you can shoot in a round is 10 for a maximum score of 30 by the end of the minigame. Each round refreshes the fuzzies that are on the grid, so there's no worries about running out of them between rounds. When the minigame begins, look at the intersections in front of you. This is where the most amount of fuzzies will be lined up, allowing you to release your arrow and nail the most amount you can. Avoiding the intersections or attempting to go for an intersection that's too off to the side will result in you getting a lower score due to the poor angle. Your arrow goes in a fast, straight line, so you don't need to shoot far in advance and you don't need to adjust the angle for any drop-off. It's quite literally a straightforward shot at the intersection in front of you once you see 10 fuzzies lined up. Don't overthink it. Cannonball! Wind your cannon with the circle pad as fast as you can, and whoever flies the farthest wins. I can't believe we're doing this with a circle pad of all things, but them's the breaks. The minigame tells you to rotate it clockwise, but you can absolutely rotate it counterclockwise as well, which is going to be more ergonomically comfortable for your left thumb to do. I personally opt in for pressing my right thumb against the circle pad instead and moving my arm in a small, quick, circular motion. But hey, that's just me. Experiment all you want with different rotating strats and find out what works for you. Cheep Diamonds. Pick out the cheap chomps with the most diamonds in their mouths before your opponents can. A round will begin with a certain amount of diamonds falling into each cheap chomp's mouth, where they'll then swim around in a circle with a few meeting in the middle occasionally for some quick movements, followed by jumps, all in an effort to make you lose track of which cheap chomp has what. Once they stop, buttons will appear over every cheap chomp's head, where you'll have to react quickly and press the button over the cheap chomp you desire. Round 1 has 4 cheap chomps with 0, 3, 6, and 9 diamonds going into each of their mouths. Round 2 has 5 cheap chomps with 0, another 0, 3, 6, and 9 diamonds, and round 3 has 0, another 0, 3, 6, 9, and 12 diamonds. This minigame may seem familiar because it's based on Plunderground from Mario Party 9, but in that one, you made your selection by running towards a chest and pressing A to open it, which gave you the ability to notice what chests other players are targeting, which could have helped you out if you lost track and body block those players from making a selection, stealing their one. Here though, it's all reaction based, so you can't look at what other players want to select if you end up losing track of the cheap chomp with the most gems. But one quirk about this minigame is that the buttons available to press each round are the same every time. Round 1's buttons are A, B, X, and Y, round 2's are A, B, X, Y, and R, and round 3's are A, B, X, Y, R, and L. Knowing this can better prepare you for what will show up and what absolutely will not. What you need to be most careful about when tracking the cheap chomps is the inside swimming dance they do on round 3. There are a lot of them to keep track of, and the choreography here is tight, I'm gonna be honest. But don't get cocky from the first round. The difficulty increases quickly. If you keep on struggling, then try putting your stylus on the one you want to keep track of. Cheepers Keepers! Press the selected button as fast as you can to reel in cheap cheeps. Each round, the button A, B, X, or Y will appear above everyone's heads. We'll then mash said button as fast as possible, for each button press will gain you a point. You do this for 3 rounds, where all the points that players have gotten are totaled up at the end. 2 big details here. The first is that once a button shows up in a round, it will no longer show up in future rounds. So if A shows up in round 1, then you can just focus on preparing to mash B, X, or Y. And if B shows up in round 2, then you can just focus on preparing to mash for X or Y. The second detail is that you can mash multiple buttons at the same time and your inputs will still go through. So if you have a technique where you press multiple buttons at the same time super fast, then that will work here. Claiming the cube. Jump and ground pound to color the white panels as they appear on the cube. Each panel is worth 1 point and you can absolutely and easily ground pound more than 1 panel at a time. Do not limit the mindset to just 2 or 3 panels, for if you ground pound in the direct center of 4 panels, indicated by the circle marker on each side, then you'll gain a whopping 4 points in a single ground pound. Aside, having 4 panels lit up at once is rare though, and requires it to be left alone by all the players for quite some time. There's not much room on this tiny cube, so running into players is unavoidable. If you ground pound a foe, then they'll get stunned for a couple seconds, which is crucial time for them to lose out on. If you were above a lit up panel when performing the ground pound, then you'll still gain points. When ground pounding, mash the A button so that you ground pound quicker. There's no reason to jump high in the air unless you're aiming to ground pound another player. Due to this minigame's camera angle, you'll often be able to see the sides of the cube below you and not above you, so I recommend moving down as you run around, scouting for which sides have lit up panels and ground pounding them accordingly. Color correction. Color as many tiles as possible by gliding across them. Bumping into another player will stun you and them for a second, which is normally not a big deal, but this minigame only lasts 7 seconds. That means you can't afford to waste any time running into other players unless you need them to come in last place. When the minigame begins, your opponents are likely to move towards the center, so I recommend circling around the perimeter of the arena in between the outermost buttons and the second outermost buttons so that you're activating pairs of them. Once you've made a rotation, there will only be a few seconds left. If another player is moving towards your buttons, then follow right behind them to turn them back to your color, denying them the opportunity. If your buttons are fairly safe, then look for an open lane that you can move in a straight line towards for maximum speed and button presses. Due to how crazy short this minigame lasts, it'll tend to be a toss-up, but if you maintain your speed and watch for open lanes, then you'll succeed fairly often. Color me fast. Color in the pictures of fruit on your touchscreen. The first to complete 3 pages wins. You'll know when you've successfully filled in a fruit with color when it does the shine effect. The detection for a fruit being filled with color is strict. Even a little, tiny amount of white can be enough to make you scratch your head wondering why you haven't moved on to the next one already, especially on a screen as small as the 3DS's. Do not get caught making this mistake. Regardless of if the fruits are close to one another or not, I'd opt in for long stylus strokes to get multiple at the same time if you can do them well with your hand. If you find trouble doing so because the angle is awkward, then do the smaller stylus swipes instead, but as you can see here, the long ones can work wonders. If you encounter the big melon page, then slide your stylus across the entire length of the 3DS back and forth to ensure that no spot is left blank. Deck hunt. Navigate the slope on your skateboard and collect coins. You'll drop 3 coins for every spiny egg you hit. This is a long minigame. There's no timer, but I've counted 45 seconds from when the minigame begins to when you reach the end, so the number one thing to keep in mind is consistently gathering coins without hitting any spiny eggs. Most coins will come in from the right as you skate down, baiting you to get closer, but alas, spiny eggs will occasionally show up here too. If you're hugging too close to the right, then you'll get hit by one without any time to react. This is why the middle right zone part of the screen is the best, so that you still have time to react to obstacles. If you see a line of coins, hold right to speed up and grab them, and then start holding left again to slow down in case any spiny eggs show up. Sometimes you'll see a row of coins show up from the left. This is rare but much appreciated if you spot them and back up to grab them before your opponents do. There is collision in this minigame, but no bumping, so you can absolutely influence where your opponents go by pushing into them, but if you're thinking you'll be able to push them into a spiny egg, then that's unlikely. They can easily slow down or speed up to move out of your way. Should an opponent run into a spiny egg though, they'll lose 3 coins, which will fly out ahead of them, able to be collected by any player. If you lose your coins by getting hit, you can still pick them up yourself, they're not lost. The coins take a second to land upon impact, so the moment you notice a player run into a spiny egg, immediately move a little ahead of them at the landing spot to increase your coin count. If your score is way higher than everyone else's near the end of the minigame, then play it safe closer to the middle of the screen. But if you're way behind in coin count after a while, then play more aggressive by hugging the right side of the screen. Diamond a dozen. Guess which tunnel contains the most gems and then select it before your opponents can. In some cases, the difference between the highest amount of gems in a tunnel and the second highest can be as little as a single gem, which means that you have got to keep your eyes peeled during the screen wipe and identify which tunnel you're seeing more gems from. This is way easier said than done though, for the wipe begins fairly slow and speeds up over time until you have to make a selection. How in the world are you expected to keep track of all 5 tunnels and how many gems are in each? Well, here's my logic. If one of the tunnels has more gems than all the others, it stands to reason that it has a higher chance of having gems at the bottom too. So when the minigame begins and the screen starts moving up, check all the tunnels to see which of them have gems in the first 2 or 3 rows. If there's a tunnel or two that doesn't have any there, then do not look at that tunnel anymore. Just lock it out of your vision. Pay attention to the few remaining tunnels with gems. If you notice another one of them starts skipping rows, lock that one out too, ignore it. Your vision should now only be focused on the 2 tunnels that contained the most gems at the beginning rows on the bottom. Follow them both as the screen wipes up, keeping track of which gems you see more on either one, then make your selection by reacting in time to which button appears above the pipe. With this strategy, I'm able to select the tunnel with the most gems with high accuracy. In rare instances, the tunnel with the most gems may not have a bundle at the bottom. It just does not happen often though. Typically, the winning tunnel will have rows of gems at the bottom, so it's all about quickly Xing out which tunnels don't do that as the screen wipes up and deciding between the 2 tunnels you've narrowed it down to. Drive for show. Use your stylus to aim golf shots at the targets on the screen. You'll earn the number of points displayed on the target. There are 4 targets that can appear: -5, 5, 10, and 20. When a point value is hit, the target must cycle between 2 other point values for the first one to appear again. For example, if you hit a 5-pointer, then it cannot be a 5-pointer again. There have to be 2 different point values in between before the 5-point value gets unlocked again as a possibility. This is especially important to keep in mind for the 20-point target. If you or another player hit a 20-pointer, then ignore that target for at least 2 more hits before paying attention to it again. Focus on the other targets that have potential to reveal a 20-pointer instead. Obviously, 10-pointers are great to go for too, so don't skip them if one's available. It's the 5-pointers and obviously the -5-pointers that aren't really worth your time. What angle you need to flick your stylus when shooting is affected by your position. Do not get tripped up by this. If your character's in the far left position, for example, then to hit the far left target, you simply flick the ball forward on the touchscreen. However, if your character's in the far right position instead, then you'll now have to flick the ball sharply to the left to hit it. I'd say that this gives the players in the middle positions a slight advantage, but I don't think it's significant enough to blame your loss on it. If a -5 target isn't hit after a few seconds, then it'll flip automatically. When you see it begin spinning, get ready to launch your ball as soon as it gets ready to reveal the next point value, since it's guaranteed to not be a -5. In fact, it's guaranteed to not be a -5 on the second one too, so you can fire away 2 balls in a row on any targets that just flip from -5. Just be aware of what angled flips will result in which targets you hit, and keep your eyes glued to the targets, keeping track of which ones ones are displaying a 20 and which ones will display a 20 in the future. Fisticlouds, bonk your opponents over the edge. Last player standing wins. This one plays like your usual survival minigame, what with jumping, punching, and the ever so famous jump kicking, which I will continue to glaze for as long as it's amazing in every minigame. Being able to move and attack at the same time, it's perfection. The quirk of this minigame is its layout. There's 4 platforms surrounding one in the middle. As the minigame goes on, these platforms will move around in different ways, constantly switching up the arena layout. You'll need to pay close attention to how the platforms in your direct area move so you'll know how much room you have to take hits or dish out hits yourself. From seconds 60 to 50, one of the hovering platforms will move. From seconds 50 to 40, 2 of the hovering platforms will move. From seconds 40 to 20, 3 of the hovering platforms will move, and there's a chance for all of the platforms to rotate clockwise or counterclockwise. From seconds 20 to 0, all 4 of the hovering platforms will have the chance to move, with the chance of all of them rotating clockwise or counterclockwise. As the time gets lower, the movement of all the platforms will speed up. As in all survival minigames like this one, it's worth pointing out that you don't get any points for knockouts. You can eliminate multiple players and still lose to someone that was playing it safe the entire time. You would rather be the latter player if you cannot afford to make a safe elimination. Now, if there are any players close to the edge or the arena shifts in a way that puts them in a dangerous spot, then go for it. But you need to keep your own safety as your top priority. If you jump in place while moving on a platform, then your character will not move with the platform. You will remain still in the air as though you jumped on a still platform, so keep that in mind. Look, I said before that jump kicks are great already, but they're just so awesome here, especially because of how absolutely quick they come out. You can press the B button for what feels like a frame after jumping, and you'll have a hitbox like whoosh right in front of you instantly. Get the feel for this and make some plays against players who think they're safe. Flip out, race and jump across platforms, and flomps to the finish line. The layout of flomps is the same every time, but the timing of each of them is random. Thankfully, all players receive the same randomized layout of flomps flipping. You are only safe to land on a flomp when it's face up. If you try to land on it while it's flipping, then you'll get flung back 3 platforms. Don't be afraid if you land on another flomp, by the way, for when you pass a flomp, it deactivates. Each flomp flips on its own timer. Some will flip quickly within a couple seconds, whereas others will take a few, but the strategy here remains the same. When the minigame begins, spam A. Your jumps to the 4th platform are free. Throughout the entire minigame, keep your eyes glued to the top of the screen and watch for flipping flomps. If the one on top of the screen just started flipping, then you'll likely be safe to land on it by the time you get there. If it just finished flipping or is still, then you'll likely be hit by the time you attempt to land there. This is the general rule of thumb. As said before, their timing intervals are different each play, meaning some flomps may be still for shorter or longer periods of time. There's no way to know which ones these are, but following this general guideline is a great start. Fuel me once? Try to fill your jetpack with just enough fuel to land on the platform. You'll notice that your arrow on the bottom screen will begin to move. You want to press A when it's right on top of the 100 mark. Not before it, not after it. Whoever's closest to the 100 mark wins. But as you can see, the catch is that the minigame will hide your arrow during the process, leaving you to recall how fast the arrow was going and press A to guess when it's on top of the 100 mark. There are also difficult speed variations for the arrow as well. So can we do anything about this? Yes, by using the demo to our advantage. The arrow speed that the Toad encounters here will be the same arrow speed for you and your opponents, and since Toad always gets a perfect score of 100 here, you can simply replicate what he does using whatever methods of memorization you like. The most straightforward one is to begin counting from 0 the moment the pump starts and see what number Toad presses it at. Then, when you play the minigame, do the same thing and press A at whatever number it was. This is a fine method, but it's not pinpoint accuracy, and I want pinpoint accuracy. You could count each ball of gas that pops out of the top and use that as a marker, but if possible, I prefer listening. Every time the rocket gets filled with gas, it makes a wee-woo noise. I like counting up each of these wee-woo noises because they happen fairly quick, which makes them good markers for accuracy. Here's an example of this method in practice. Let's first listen to what the wee-woo noises sound like. Alright, now let's actually count up each wee-woo noise in a real demonstration here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so it was like a 9.5. We didn't like really get to 10, so we're gonna have to hit it like right after 9. Start! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so it was like a weird 9.5 one. This will be a good example because it's like a very strange one. Usually it's on the mark, but let's see if we can get it even here. Wow, we were really close. Even on like an awkward one, Wario got it exactly. But you can see how close it was. But yeah, none of this matters though if the demo is skipped. If that happens, then you've got to go at this without any tricks. Or at least the typical ones. Through repeated testing, I found that there are 6 different arrow speeds in this minigame, which I measure by wee-woos at 8, around 10-ish, 12, 13, 16, and 24. Here's an example of the shortest one at 8 wee-woos. And here's an example of the longest one at 24 wee-woos. These two are easy to recognize due to how ridiculously fast the arrow goes or how painfully slow the arrow goes. If you notice either one, then you can be pretty sure how many wee-woos you need to stop it at. The numbers in between are the middling speeds, which you can only really get in your noggin after playing this one a few times. But to sum it up, try and make sure the demo is not skipped and go for whatever memorization method you prefer. Garden of Eatin. Pick a plant to water and hope for the best. Piranha plants are mixed in among regular flowers. My favorite type of minigame. You look at all these flowers and think to yourself, they're different colors. That must mean something, right? Or their dances are different. That must mean something, right? But nope, I've done this one tons of times, and these plants will just be whatever they want to be. Good for them, but not for me, who's trying not to get chomped on. Have fun, cause I'm eating this garden when you're done. Get real. Wind the film back and forth to find the frame pictured on your touchscreen. There are 3 rounds. The first player to match the image on the touchscreen gets 9 points, the second gets 6, the third gets 3, and the fourth gets 0, making a perfect score in this minigame 27 points. This minigame only has 3 films that will have you play every time you encounter it, and unlike Picture This from Mario Party 7, which this minigame is very similar to, these films are quite short, making them easy to memorize so that you can quickly wind to the frame that matches the one on the touchscreen. The first film is Mario popping out of a warp pipe in the middle, jumping down, and running off to the right. The second film is Mario flying down on a paper airplane from the top right to the middle left and then to the bottom right. The third film is Mario running back and forth down a hallway with Peepas just kind of flying all about. In each example, use Mario as your constant for figuring out which frame you need to get to. He's the most recognizable thing in every film, and his actions are easy to identify. The truly hard part, though, is the actual winding of the film itself. You do so by rotating the circle pad clockwise and counterclockwise with what seems to be 1 frame every quarter circle turn, but sometimes it's just a single 1/8 circle turn. It just feels a bit inconsistent, so above all else, I'd say getting used to these finicky controls should be your top priority, so you aren't stuck constantly winding between a few frames for the one you want. Git Along, Goomba! Use your lasso to catch as many Goombas as possible. Draw circles on the touchscreen to widen the lasso, and then slide to throw. When the lasso is smaller, then the direction you throw your stylus in is where the lasso will land. If you and another player throw your lassos around some Goombas, then whoever's lasso landed first will get the Goombas. It is absolutely not worth it to do any small lasso throws due to how long it takes to throw a lasso and reel it back in. You're much better off widening your lasso to the max amount, and the instant you see another bunch of Goombas pop up from some holes, throw it. This max amount is wide enough to grab all the Goombas on the platform. You'd think that being able to get all of them would require a massive amount of time widening your lasso, but it's honestly not that long. The value you gain from doing this strategy properly is much more than if you do smaller lasso throws. You just want to avoid other players' lassos landing right before yours. If you notice that they've already thrown their lassos in the past few seconds, you'll be safe to throw your massive one. But this is more of a side observation and not something I would wait for before throwing my lasso every time. Prioritize large captures as soon as you see the holes open and the Goombas pop out. Go with the flow. Grab baby penguins and race across the slippery ice floes to return them to their mother. Each penguin is worth 1 point. When the minigame starts, you do not begin holding a penguin. You're facing down for a reason. You've got to first directly run to a penguin to grab one, then move up. I know it's silly to point this out, but it's pretty easy to no-brain and head up forgetting to grab a penguin first. Once you've got one, you'll notice all the ice floes moving to the right, but at varying speeds. This causes them to line up at different intervals, allowing you to cross. Obviously, if there's a line of them in a row, then go full speed ahead without worry. Their slipperiness is something to worry about though. You'll notice that if you go in a straight line, then your character will be moved to the right based on how fast a flow is going, meaning that in most cases you should be heading up and a little bit to the left to counteract this annoying pushing mechanic. Anticipate any sudden movements you'll have to make because, newsflash, ice is slippery and may cause you to fall in. If you do, then you'll be placed onto the side you touched last and drop a penguin if you were holding onto one. This is grounds for losing the minigame if you're playing against competent players, so avoid falling in at all costs. Goomba to maneuver. Avoid the obstacles and lead as many Goombas to the finish line as possible. Everyone begins with 10 Goombas and are given the same layout. To prevent total confusion from occurring, your opponents appear ghost-like. This doesn't affect anything on the game for you, it's just so you know what they're up to. As you bob and weave in between the obstacles, you'll notice that the Goombas don't follow your pathing exactly. The further out a Goomba is, the more it'll cut across the direction you went. So if you make a turn right around an obstacle, then sure, the first bunch of Goombas may make it, but the latter ones won't get the memo of what you just did and will turn directly into the spikes and end up losing you points. This is why you should make your turns when you're halfway between the obstacles behind you and the ones ahead of you. It may seem dangerous, but you turn sharp here, so you have more than enough time to position yourself in between obstacles, and as a result, give your Goombas in the back a lot of time to adapt to where you're going. The only other thing to watch out for is your alignment. Sometimes you might think you're properly lined up with an opening, but after a few steps, you'll see that you aren't. Just look at the distance between you and the closest wall, then the distance between the opening and the closest wall to better gauge if you'll make the cut. If you lose all your Goombas, then you're automatically out, by the way. Your character will mourn them too. Great bars of fire. Duck and jump to avoid the spinning fire bars. There are 2 bars of fire that rotate, a lower one which can be ducked under and a higher one which can be jumped over. Getting hit will cause you to lose a heart. Lose all 3 and you're out. Whoever's the last one standing wins. If multiple players are standing at the end, then whoever has more hearts remaining wins. These bars of fire don't change directions or anything silly like that, but as time goes on, they'll begin to move faster, but not always at the same time. This can force you to have to do a duck followed by a quick jump right afterwards, or vice versa. One big point to keep in mind here is that ducking has priority over jumping. If you jump and hold down while you're jumping, then you'll duck as soon as you touch the ground. However, if you're holding down and ducking and then you try to press the jump button, then you won't jump. This is something that can make you lose a heart if you've got to duck and jump one after another. Make sure you release the duck before inputting your jump. Speaking of jumps, tapping A will give you a short hop and holding it will give you a full hop. Seeing as how you need to jump a little high in order to clear the lower fire bar, there is no reason to do a tiny pathetic short hop. Ensure that you hold down your jump button just enough to clear the lower bar, but don't go too high when the bars start going fast, or you won't be able to land in time to dodge the upper fire bar. Grid is good. Place one of your shapes on the board to claim a set of numbers. You'll win points for the numbers you claimed that weren't also claimed by your opponents. Everyone will be given the same set of 3 shapes to place on the board. There are different kinds of shapes that the minigame can give you, but your overall strategy here won't change all that much. For minigames like these, I have a saying: always count on greed. That means you should never go for the 3s. I know it's tempting to think of a world where you get one of them, and you might even convince yourself that the others will psych themselves out for going for it, so in actuality, it's actually safe for you to go for it, but they're thinking that too, or they're just greedy. It's gonna be one or the other, and when you place one of your shapes onto a 3, you'll likely find that it'll overlap with one of your opponent's shapes, and you won't get anything. You are much better off prioritizing placing your shapes down over 1s and 2s. You should always try to have at least a single 2. Other players are unlikely to go for any 1s unless it happened to be next to a 3, in which case look out for which ones these are and target the others instead. If on the first round you see the other players overlapped with one another trying to go for tons of 2s and 3s, then they'll end up with a low amount of points, which means they may try to go for the same thing again to catch up, which means you should play the exact same way and go for another 2 and a couple 1s. It's a bit paradoxical when you're behind in points in this minigame, because you'll really try to convince yourself you can get away with the big boy points for a turnaround, but you're still probably better off avoiding the 3s, since that line of thinking is likely what other players are considering too. At the end of the day though, this is a wacky mind game minigame where anything can happen. You might have opponents who take things more seriously or joke around in selecting the same spot every time. Just take note of who you're playing with and keep strategy in mind. Gyro for the gold. Guide your character through the obstacle course as quickly as possible. If you fall off at any point, you'll respawn at the nearest checkpoint. There are 3 sections. The first section has rows of mushrooms that, when touched, will bounce you away. There are 2 large sets of mushrooms that will alternate between appearing and disappearing, but they're quite predictable considering they alternate in rows. So while you roll forward, observe ahead for where the sets of mushrooms pop up and what the openings are before committing to an opening. Ideally, you should be looking to go straight as much as possible without making any unnecessary turns. The second section has blocks that fall from the sky in a maze-like fashion when the front-running player rolls through it. This is meant to make it more difficult for the player in first to keep their lead and make it easier for the players behind to catch up, since they can see in advance where the openings are to proceed. Touching these blocks doesn't do anything like the mushrooms did, so you're free to weave in between the gaps. The main thing to avoid here is constantly bumping into your opponents and getting stuck. A funny thing can happen here if you bounce on an opponent's head when shooting off the ramp, which will let you roll on top of the blocks. It's unlikely that this will help you for too long, but take advantage of it if it happens. The third section has 2 horizontally moving platforms. Observe where they currently are and choose the side that the platform closest to you will be when you arrive. If you select the wrong side and even one of your opponents chooses the correct one, then you'll essentially lose the minigame unless they make a big mistake in moving towards the goal. When viewing the minigame like this, it doesn't look all that bad, but recall that it's a gyro minigame, so your view of everything here is going to be twisting and turning along with your 3DS. I find it helpful to move with my 3DS when doing gyro games like this, but that's just me. Feel free to experiment with what makes things easier for you. Hare Today. Catch the rabbits and put them in the pen as fast as you can. Gray rabbits are worth 1 point, whereas golden rabbits are worth 3 points. Every few seconds, one of the 4 holes in the wall will send out a couple puffs of air, where 3 rabbits will hop out one after another. When they first hop out, the gray rabbits will land right in front of the hole, and the golden ones will launch out and land closer to the pen. You can intercept either of these jumps with a well-timed catch. So if you position yourself where the gray rabbits land, then you can both catch them and a golden rabbit before it gets the chance to launch itself further. The same hole cannot send out rabbits twice in a row, so after grabbing a rabbit from one and pressing A on the pen to throw it in there, immediately move to the opposite side of the arena. At this moment, you'll see one of the other 3 holes begin puffing, and since you've already moved away from the one that just puffed, you'll likely be in a good position to be front in line to grab the next rabbit. The golden rabbits show up randomly, and while they're fantastic to grab when they appear, they don't show up often enough to bank on. You should be preparing right in front of the usual landing spots and grabbing the first rabbit you see before moving to the next location. And if you have to choose between a golden rabbit or a gray one, then obviously make your way over to grabbing the golden. Helter Shellter. Guess which shell contains the most pearls? There are 4 rounds. Each round, you've got to move up to a shell and press A to select it, where there's a random chance of getting either 1 pearl, 2, 3, or seaweed, which is worth nothing to the game, but it's worth something to me. How to tell what has what? The positioning? No. The colors? No. The animations? Nope. Wait, so is it just pure luck again? Nothing to identify? I'm afraid so. Have fun. Hide and Splat. Avoid being squished by the tox boxes for as long as possible. The minigame will begin with 2 tox boxes on the screen. They can only move horizontally and vertically, not diagonally. For this reason, you should always avoid being to up, right, down, or left of any tox box, and instead position yourself on the diagonals of them so you're guaranteed safety at least for its first movement. That doesn't mean that you'll always get squished if a tox box rolls onto you though. Each one has a hole on one of its sides that you'll be safe within. This isn't something I would go out of my way to do unless for style points, but it's a good get out of jail free card if you notice that the open side is facing your direction. Every seconds or so, the game will alternate between a new tox box dropping into the arena and the current tox boxes in the arena speeding up. When a tox box drops down, you'll see a shadow over the square of where the tox box is falling. Thankfully, it will always fall onto its open side, so you're actually safe to remain on the shadow. When the tox boxes speed up, you'll see all the tox boxes in the arena hop at the same time, indicating that. The max amount of tox boxes that can be in the arena are 4, and at about the halfway point of 30 seconds or so, you'll be left with this amount going at max speed as well. Just like before, you've got to keep yourself at the diagonal of any tox boxes, or in the worst case scenario, on the open side of a tox box you're next to. Just avoid the corners at all costs. You cannot slip in between the corners of 2 tox boxes. Hop till you drop. Race to the finish by jumping from platform to platform without falling off. The layout is the same every time. Fall into the gaps and you're out. Pressing the A button a little bit will give you a short hop, whereas holding it down will give you a full hop. There is collision with other players, by the way, so be careful about moving into or accidentally jumping on others' heads. When the minigame begins, you'll take a leap onto the wide blue platform ahead, then a jump down and up between the 2 orange ones. This conveyor belt is your next stop, and it's rolling backwards at a slow speed, so don't overcompensate it. It doesn't take much to run past it. The next jump has a conveyor belt at the end rolling backwards as well, so make sure you perform a full hop down to the orange platforms here. Now we've got some blocky platforms at the top with more backwards conveyor belts below. I recommend leaping to the blocks instead of dealing with the conveyors, just so you don't have to encounter any gimmicks. One easy jump to these orange platforms, and now you should be looking to move closer to the right side of the screen because the ending is coming up pretty soon. The jump from the alternating platforms is your last. Placings are determined by who lands on the platform first, not whoever crosses the finish line in the air first. So if you're up against someone in a close match, do your best to touch the ground before they do and secure your win. Horror Harriers. Dodge the enemies until you're the last player standing. If you touch a single peepa, then you're out. The general rule of thumb in this minigame is to look for openings in between Peepas to stay safe. You cannot avoid all of them by hugging the edges, so get comfortable with this maneuver. There are 3 formations, and each of them can have the Peepas moving clockwise or counterclockwise. During seconds 60 to 40, they'll spawn in a plus sign formation, slowly expanding out and contracting repeatedly. When they expand out, they'll subtly speed up, and when they contract, they'll subtly slow down. It's not very obvious, so it can definitely catch you off guard if you're not expecting them to outpace your character. Just stay closer to the inner part of the arena to outrun them. During seconds 40 to 20, they'll spawn in a circle formation, where they'll expand out and contract repeatedly once more, but wow, do they get a speed boost. Weaving in between Peepas is non-negotiable now. When they expand out, go in the middle of all of them, and when they begin to contract, go on the outskirts once more. During seconds 20 to 0, they'll spawn in an inner circle and outer circle, constantly spinning and switching places as they expand and contract. The furthest outskirts are the safest parts here, but even they will have a single Peepa come at you every now and then. I like to stick to exactly one side, and when a Peepa comes speeding by, dodge it to the middle a little bit, then I move forward a little bit along the outskirts and repeat the process. This is because when the Peepa comes by again, it'll be moved a little forward itself, so us moving forward after a dodge accounts for that, letting us easily handle this formation until the minigame is over. You can run into your opponents if you wish, but mastering survival for yourself will grant you a victory most of the time anyways. Kabob and Weave. Run and jump to avoid the skewers for as long as possible. There are 5 skewers total. Touching one even after it's already moved will knock you out. In addition, there's collision here, but not to a crazy extent. Like, yeah, you can move players a little bit, but you're one jump away from death if you don't react fast enough. Jumping is fun too, but I just don't think interfering with others is as worth it this time around. The main key here is observation. You'll notice that skewers don't just pop out randomly. They telegraph when they're about to, well, skewer by rotating first, giving you an opportunity to get to safety. If you're confused about where exactly each skewer will be after they skewer, then use the fences next to you. There are 5 of them and they perfectly line up with the 5 skewers. You also need to avoid the left and right sides at all costs. These skewers are mean and will try to goat you into staying on the edges where the edge skewers may or may not pop out, but we don't want to take that chance. There may be times where you feel like the only way for you to go is the edge, but you often have more options than you think you do. If there's a skewer to the side of you that's about to retract and a skewer on your position ready to skewer, you'll still have enough time to move to the newly opened up space while the one you were just on gets skewered. This is much more preferred than betting on an edge skewer not popping out. As expected, the amount of skewers that become active increase and speed up as time goes on, so watch out for that and stay aware of openings in the middle and middle sides first and foremost. Mad ladders. Race up the ladders while avoiding the boulders thrown by the stone spikes. Getting hit by a boulder won't knock you out, but it will stun you for a second. Whoever gets to the top first wins. There are 5 columns of ladders, and whenever a boulder falls down the ladder you're on, you want to swap to a different one, but be wary. Switching ladders takes away time that you could have spent climbing upwards, so do not switch ladders unless you must do so, either to proceed upward on a different ladder or to avoid a boulder. You cannot switch ladders unless the bottom of your character has a ladder to the side of them. The top alone is not enough. What's probably the funniest aspect about this minigame is that it has hard collision, as in when you push against a player, you cannot move them. This means that if there's a player that you need to lose the minigame and you're both on a ladder that you must each commit to, then you can push against them, executing this minigame's version of the butt block. They'll either wait for you to move or just give up and back away so they can switch ladders. Either way, your butt has essentially ruined the minigame for them unless your other opponents have no idea what they're doing. To prevent yourself from getting blocked off, you want to switch ladders as late as possible. If you do it too early, then you'll be behind any players on your side, letting them slide in ahead of you. The boulders fall in from the top screen to the bottom, so keep your eyes peeled for the instant a boulder appears up there and prepare to dodge. Magmathon. Jump from rock to rock by quickly pressing the buttons that appear. Be careful, false steps waste time. The only buttons that a rock ahead of you can show is A, B, X, or Y. As the minigame states, doing a wrong input will cause you to falter and waste time, so you're much better off being accurate than rushing. Your first jump will clearly show you what button you have to press as the minigame starts, but after that you'll either see 1 or 2 rocks appear in front of you. I'm being very specific when I say in front of you, by the way. To count, it has to be ahead and a little to the left or ahead and a little to the right. I can't input the button for this rock way off to the side, for example. Only an input from one of the 2 in front of me will work. In addition, a button can show up 2 times in a row for you, but not 3. So if you encounter such a button multiple times in a row, you can lock that one out for your next input and prepare to hit one of the other 3. Heck, if you're falling behind, you can mash one of the buttons to jump as quickly as possible in hopes you get lucky and catch up. The final game-winning rock is a singular input. No special gimmick other than it being large to indicate that it's the end. Reaction time will win above all here, but I should note that you can barely make out the buttons on top of the rocks as they pop out of the magma, so play this minigame enough and you'll have a keen eye out just a few frames ahead of everyone else per jump, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you don't falter and make your inputs properly, will definitely add up. Match Faker. Take notes with the stylus to help remember the order of the tiles. Then select the tile you think matches the selected enemy. Here are all the possible enemies that can appear in this minigame. You only have 15 seconds to draw on the touchscreen, where the panels on the top will flip and 3 random enemies will be shown, and you'll have to select where they are. Now 15 seconds is not enough time for the average person to write down the names of every enemy in each spot they appear in, so you're much better off in writing out the first couple letters or an acronym for each enemy's names instead. For example, Bullet Bill could be BB, Pokey could be Po, and Fuzzy could be FZ. Anything works so long as you'll remember what your letters are referring to when it comes time to identify where the 3 randomly selected enemies are. If you don't know the name of an enemy, then don't sweat it. Write down anything that's unique about them instead, or heck, draw a quick sketch of them if time allows. Meteor Melee. Catch as many stars as you can while avoiding meteors. Meteors and stars will fall from the top screen to the bottom screen. You'll know exactly where each of them will fall based on the increasing size of the shadows on the bottom screen. Unfortunately, there's no way to distinguish between the shadow of a star and the shadow of a meteor. You just need to do a good job at keeping track of which one is which as they fall from the top to the bottom. The main problem is collision with other players. It is at an all-time high here. You could be right under a star ready to catch it just for your opponents to push you out of the way and take it for themselves. Play as dirty as possible. See someone else ready to grab one? Push them, adjust, and get it for yourself. Need someone to lose the minigame in particular and spot an opportunity to get them meteorized? Push them into it. Observation and aggressive interference is the way to win this one. Mild Gunman. Wait for a button to appear on the target and then press it as quickly as possible to fire a paintball. First person to correctly react gets 9 points, second gets 6 points, third gets 3 points, and fourth gets you 1 point. If you press the wrong button, then you get no points. The possible buttons the sign may show are A, B, X, and Y. It can absolutely show the same button multiple times in a row, and in rare cases, show it all 3 times in a row. You cannot rule out any button, so be very quick to react to whatever pops up. Musical snares. Collect as many musical notes as you can. Special gold notes are worth extra points. Specifically, the gray notes are worth 1 point and the gold notes are worth 2. This one is essentially a scoring minigame version of bumper balls with gyro controls to boot. You'll know when a note is about to spawn based on the circles on the floor. The color of the circle reflects which color note will pop out, so it goes without saying that you should prioritize rolling towards gold circles over gray ones whenever possible. Don't wait around for them, just take them as they go. Oh, and gold notes don't show up until the 15-second mark. One interesting quirk about this minigame is that the more notes you gather, the larger your ball will be and the slower to boot. This serves as a small catch-up mechanic mechanic for players behind, but isn't really something that warrants any change in strategy unless you're aiming for a no and someone who's way far behind is already headed there. They will outspeed you. No traction action. Slide and bump your way to the finish line over 3 slippery laps. They were not kidding with the slippery part. This might be the most slippery minigame that we've encountered so far. It's one thing to watch gameplay of it, but it's a whole other beast to actually try and control these vehicles yourself, which is why I'd recommend practicing this one at least a couple times so you know what you're getting yourself into. First and foremost, do not hold left on the turns. You'll end up turning too far and will hit a wall. Instead, repeatedly do small taps to the left to ease yourself into the turn and then straighten yourself out when the turn's over. Bumping into a wall when parallel with it is not a big deal, but slamming into one is. You've also got your opponents to worry about here, only if you failed that first turn. If you nail it, then you'll likely end up ahead of everyone else and can focus on repeatedly tapping left on the turns instead of having to deal with a pileup of cars. You can prevent a threat from winning this one pretty easily by driving the opposite direction and crashing into them. The game will even tell you you're going the wrong way, but it won't actually do anything about it. Practice absolutely makes perfect here. Pachinko Wizard. Try to guess where Lakitu's spiny egg will fall and choose a safe place to stand. Oh boy, we got ourselves some Pachinko. There are 3 rounds, with one player being eliminated by the end of each one. At the beginning of a round, Lakitu will fly side to side and randomly stop in a spot, and then random buttons will appear over each spot at the bottom of the screen, requiring you to react quicker than the other players to get the spot you want. The possible buttons in the first round are A, B, X, and Y. In the second round, they're A, B, and X, and in the third round, they're A and B. This is a detail not mentioned in the rules section of the minigame, so you may have an advantage over other players that aren't aware that they don't need to be ready for certain buttons. All that being said, the absurd amount of bumpers, the moving bumpers, and the crazy bounciness of the spiny egg makes this one pretty luck-based overall. It's hard to recommend outright safe spots in most areas Lakitu stops in, but if he's all the way to the left or all the way to the right, then most of the time you'll want to be on the opposite side of him. The spiny egg can still dome you from here, but it would have to bounce in a wacky way to do so. Any other position Lakitu takes can have the spiny egg going every which way, so don't get too bummed if this is a minigame you can't seem to get a win on. Paddle Skedaddle. Race to the finish by paddling your canoe through the winding stream. The layout is the same every time. You gain more speed from a paddle if you swipe your stylus from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. Little swipes don't give you much. If you hit a wall, then you'll lose some speed. If you're making a turn, even a slight one, prioritize swiping on one side very quickly for maximum speed. Only when you're heading towards a wall or going in a straight line should you be alternating a bit more. There are different sections of the race indicated by the different environments in the background, but these don't actually affect the mechanics of the game. Peepa Peepa. Move your system to shine a light on Peepas for as long as possible. You get 1 point for about every half a second you have your flashlight on a Peepa. Each Peepa can give out 5 points before disappearing. What this means is if you and, for example, 2 other players have your lights shining on a Peepa, then each of you could end up taking a split of the total 5 points that Peepa has. This is no good. You do not want to share points from a Peepa with other players. You can see where everyone else's flashlights are pointing, so search for Peepas where they aren't in order to monopolize all the points for yourself. The instant that a Peepa gives out its 5th point, move on to the next one so you aren't wasting any time. If you need a threat to lose this minigame, then follow their light the entire time and keep sharing points with them. There is no way for them to get first place if you do this so long as you're properly tracking them. Point and shoot. Move your system around to find the selected characters and take their pictures. There are 3 rounds. Each round will have 3 target enemies that you must move your 3DS around to look for. When you spot one, get them in the middle of your cursor and press A to snap a picture to earn a point. You'll know you're properly lined up because you'll see your cursor shrink a little bit. The play area is a big rectangle. You'll know you're on the edge if you see one of these arrows, which indicates that you can't move any further in that direction. There are also 2 binocular sliders, one on the top and one on the left, that show you how far you are on each axis. Once a player has taken a picture of one of the target enemies, it's off the list. When all target enemies have gotten a picture taken of them, the next round will begin. Enemies can show up in multiple rounds back to back, and you can earn multiple points in a round if you're fast enough. Lastly, there will only ever be 3 enemies in the area at a time. There are no fake outs, so the moment you see any enemy, quickly snap a picture of them and move on. Here are all the enemies that can appear in this minigame. Let's go over each possible location for each enemy. Keep in mind that the order in which I say each location is the recommended pathing to find the enemy as quickly as possible. The blooper can be found below the island, at the top right part of the island, behind the bridge, or behind the left building. The Cheep can be found left of the island, under the bridge, behind the bridge, or behind the right building. The Goomba can be found on the close by right corner, on the island, next to the right flower patch, right of the bridge, or under the lighthouse over at the left side. The Piranha Plant can be found at the left warp pipe, far left warp pipe, right warp pipe, and the back right warp pipe. Easy one to remember since you're just checking all the warp pipes. The Shy Guy can be found on the boat to the right, under the lighthouse, by the lighthouse, on the left building, or on the right building. The Jumbo Ray will always be slowly flying in the sky in a large clockwise motion. The Koopa Troopa will always be in the hot air balloon floating in the sky. The Lakitu will always be flying around in a slow figure 8 formation. You can move your camera as soon as you're told which enemies are the target ones before the round has even begun. Enemies can absolutely appear right in front of you, and they'll do so in unique ways, such as popping out of the water or running out from a building to their usual spot. If your camera's already on an enemy when the round begins, you'll see red lines shooting outward from where they are. This is the game's way of telling you, don't turn away, you're already on me. Knowing the spots for each enemy will have you blazing through this minigame every time without your opponents really standing a chance unless they get pretty lucky. Pokey Corral. Avoid the pokies and keep your footing on the moving sand. Last player standing wins. If you fall off the arena, you're out. The arena is constantly moving everything clockwise or counterclockwise. Players specifically are also moved outward towards the edge, forcing you to move with the arena and inward the entire minigame. Touching a Pokey will bump you away from it, making it more likely that you'll fall off. You're granted a second of invincibility frames after bumping into one though, so you're free to move alongside any Pokies to get to a safe spot after bumping into one. When the minigame begins, there will be one Pokey in the middle of the arena. Every 5 seconds, another Pokey will spawn until after 20 seconds, all 4 Pokies have spawned in a plus formation. During this time, the arena will steadily shrink, making it way more likely for you to fall off if you run into a Pokey. On paper, this minigame looks very scary and hard to deal with, but it's honestly not that bad. Just stick to one side, constantly moving along in the clockwise or counterclockwise direction while moving inward a bit. If you get used to this motion, then you should have no problem winning even as the arena shrinks down. The only thing to worry about at this stage are the other players running into you, but if they're having trouble, then they're likely to fall off quickly anyways. Pool Boy. Race around the pool and collect as many flag boys as possible. Red boys are worth 1 point and golden boys are worth 3 points. You move around in this minigame by rolling the ball on the bottom screen with your stylus. The faster your swipes, the faster you'll go. When the minigame begins, there will always be one boy already spawned in the middle of the arena. Lakitu will hover around the arena, stop, and throw 3 boys around him at a time. No boys he throws will drop right below him. He will always toss them way out away from one another. This makes it unlikely for you to get all 3 or even multiple boys at once, since there will often be other players closer to the rest of the boys. You'll know a golden boy is coming because you'll see it right before he makes his throw. Unfortunately, there's no tell for which direction he'll actually throw this boy in. It can be this way way, that way, over there. At first I thought that maybe the direction he was facing or which way he moved would be an indicator, but he can also throw the boys behind him too. I'd say your top priority is getting really good at moving your ball fast and accepting when Lakitu is too far away from you to get boys from. If you stubbornly move towards Lakitu every time he throws them out, even if all of your opponents are already over there, then you'll be left with nothing and in a bad position for the next time he moves. Instead, recognize when you're in a poor spot and follow where Lakitu moves next so that you're there first and have a better shot at grabbing the golden boy. Puzzle Pronto. Solve 3 touchscreen puzzles as quickly as you can. There are 4 possible puzzle variations, of which the minigame will only choose 1 for everyone to play. Each puzzle variation has 3 levels that all players will go through. Whoever finishes all 3 levels first wins. The numbers puzzle has you tapping on the numbers in ascending order. The first level goes from 1 to 4, the second level goes from 1 to 6, and the third level goes from 1 to 9. Tapping the correct number will make it go away, and tapping the wrong one will cause nothing to happen. Not much to say here other than study your numbers. If you don't know how to count from 1 to 9, then now's the time. The power-up puzzle has you picking up the power-ups at the bottom and dropping them on top of the holes that match at the top. There will always be one more power-up at the bottom than there are holes at the top. The first level has 3 power-ups at the bottom, the second level has 4 power-ups at the bottom, and the third level bumps it up to 6 power-ups at the bottom. You need to be slightly accurate in how you drop off an item into the correct slot. If you're wrong when you release the stylus, then it'll pop back to where it was. The warp pipe puzzle has you rotating parts of warp pipes to make them connect. You'll know you've connected a piece when it turns from orange to green. The first level has a single straight warp pipe where you've got to rotate the 2 sections to straighten them out. You can rotate the parts on this level in particular very fast since the game will lock in the pieces at the proper spots as soon as they arrive. It also doesn't matter which way you rotate either of these pieces since the warp pipe is straight, so focus more on speed here than accuracy. The second level has a single bent warp pipe where you've still got 2 pieces to worry about. The game won't lock it in for you as easily as the first level, so be quick in spinning them around, and once you see a piece lock, move on to the next one. The third level has a warp pipe split into 3 different openings, but still with only 2 pieces to rotate. Lining these up is a little trickier, but just like before, keep spinning until they properly lock in, then move on to the next. If you're able to recognize where the widest gap is in between pieces of the warp pipe and line that up with the end's widest gap, then you can complete this one quicker. The tapping puzzle will have multiple power-ups moving along the screen where you've got to tap them all to proceed. Each level has its own unique pattern the power-ups follow, either clockwise or counterclockwise. Sometimes the pattern will be rotated this way or that way, but the pattern's shape overall will remain the same. Even if you don't know what patterns each of these levels have, it's pretty easy to quickly tap on each mushroom and move on to the next one before clearing out the level. Overall, the concepts of each of these mini-games, if you will, are not that complicated and mainly require on quick reaction time and motor skills, but knowing exactly what you have to do and what patterns each of them have for each level will surely give you at least a couple seconds advantage, which can mean everything when it comes to winning. Quickiest Cricket. Race to the finish atop a mechanical cricket. The layout is the same every time. Number 1 focus here is the controls. You move the cricket by holding your circle pad back and releasing it, kind of like a rubber band. If you release it super quick, then your cricket will go nowhere. There is no reason to do this short of a hop. To go the full distance, you hold it back and release as soon as the springs on the legs are fully compressed. This happens fast, so you can hold and flick pretty quick to speed through this minigame. There are 3 major sections. The first one has pairs of rocks. Touching one will bump you away and stun you for a second. Any rock ran into will destroy it, which there is no purpose to doing, so sidestep them as much as you can. And I literally mean sidestep if you need to. You can move your cricket to the left, right, or even backwards if you want. Your opponent's taking too much time to catch up? Go backwards a little to cut them some slack or make fun of them. Anyways, the second section has piranha plants, which will hurt you if you so much as touch them, but they'll also lunge out at you themselves. Their attack area is indicated by the patch of dirt surrounding them. So long as you're are outside this patch, you're good to move on. The third section has 2 pairs of wigglers running in a large circle back to back. If you're in the middle of the path, then wait for a wiggler to pass in front of you, then hop into the middle of the circle, then do the same for the next wiggler, rinse and repeat. Touching a wiggler at any time will knock you away. You cannot hop over any of the obstacles listed, by the way. They are all too tall and you will end up getting knocked for trying it. Don't be afraid to hug the wall on some jumps. Your momentum will not be affected and you'll slide smoothly alongside them. You have collision with your opponents, which can be a little annoying, but you can't bump into them or be bumped by them, so they're unlikely to be a huge issue so long as you're aware of how the controls work and manage to gain even a small lead at the beginning. Rat-a-tat Flat. Jump and ground pound to squish as many scaredy rats as possible. Gray rats are worth 1 point and golden rats are worth 3 points. There are 8 holes that the rats will come out of, with 2 on each side. The rats will often come out in a straight line, and when they bump into each other, will change directions. They'll also stop occasionally before turning and moving again. If they move parallel against another rat, then they'll keep moving in the same direction they were going before stopping eventually. You moving into them doesn't do anything to their behavior. It just pushes them in whatever direction you're moving alongside them moving where they were already going. The golden rats are what you really need to look out for. Goldens being 3 points this time around is a big deal, and they're pretty common to boot. They don't have any special attributes that make them harder to ground pound, so the moment they pop out of a hole and you hear that shining sound effect, make for them like a heat-seeking missile. The only time you should ignore one is if another player will undoubtedly ground pound it first. Other opportunities to look out for are the moment any rats are next to each other. Like I said before, they come out in a straight line, which means they'll often intersect with one another, making it easy for you to ground pound multiple at a time for lots of points. You can even ground pound your opponents to stun them for a second if you really need a particular player to lose, but I'd prioritize gaining as many points as possible instead. Rope a slope. Jump over the trees to rappel down the cliff as quickly as possible. Your jump height will be the same no matter if you tap the A button or hold it down. Some trees are a little larger than the others, requiring a slightly more well-timed jump, but other than that, this is a pretty simple reaction-based minigame. You'll be slow at first during the first few seconds of gameplay, so when you see a tree pop up from the bottom of the screen, you'll have to wait a second before jumping. But once you're at max speed later on during gameplay, your jumps will be nearly right after when you see the trees appear at the bottom, so keep your eyes glued there. If you get hit, then you will not get knocked out, you'll just reduce to the slowest speed, but that's a pretty big punishment in and of itself, so try to go for a perfect game. Shrub Hubbub. Use your stylus to quickly trim the shrubs into the selected pattern. There are 4 rounds, and whoever finishes all 4 rounds first wins. Here are all the different variations for each round. You'll notice that the shape you have to cut out increases by 1 side every round you do. Round 1 is triangles, round 2 is quadrilaterals, round 3 is pentagons, and round 4 is hexagons. In order to chop off a section, you need to touch your stylus onto one circle and then follow the dotted line path to the circle across from it. If you don't follow the path closely enough or go too slow, then the tree will shake, indicating that you need to try again. To minimize how long it takes for you to complete each round, make sure that when you end a trim, that you begin the next one at the closest dot and so on. The later rounds might look scary with how many dots there are, but you can start with any of them, and so long as you follow the simple strategy of continuing off the closest dot, then you'll go in a smooth circle around as you trim each and every line. Skyd and Seek. Keep track of how many enemies remain in the cloud using your stylus. There are 2 enemies to keep track of, Paratroopas and Paragoombas, which I will refer to as just Koopas and Goombas so that we can simply write K and G on our touchscreen for each type. This is where we'll count how many of each type of enemy are in the cloud. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, except for the fact that enemies can leave the cloud too. Specifically, new arrivals will fly in from the right, and leaving ones will fly out to the left. This complicates things a bit. If you attempt to keep track of each type of enemy via tallying them, you'll quickly run into confusion the instant an enemy leaves. You can't erase your tally, and scribbling it out is a bit clunky. You're much better off writing the literal number of enemies that are currently in the cloud. For example, if a Koopa enters the cloud, you write 1. If another enters, you write 2. If a Koopa leaves, then now you write 1 again. If 2 more Koopas enter, then you write 3, and so on for each type of enemy. When the minigame asks you how many of each enemy are in the cloud, all you have to do now is look at the last number you wrote down for each enemy. One last helpful tip is that there will always be at least one of each enemy in the cloud by the end. There will also never be more than 5 of each enemy in the cloud by the end. So if you end up counting 0 for an enemy or any number above 5 for an enemy, then you miscounted and should input the number closest to your misinputs. Slip and slip, run and jump to avoid the penguins without falling into the sea. Last one standing wins. Touching any of these pushy penguins will not cause you to get bumped or otherwise lose control of your character. You'll simply be moved, but this alone could be enough if they push you at just the right angle to send you hurtling into the water. The iceberg will only tilt left and right, and it does not depend on you or your opponents, but solely any penguins that are on it. Even a single penguin sliding from left to right will cause the entire iceberg to tilt in that direction. The iceberg will remain tilted in whatever direction it was at last. The penguin formations are pretty simple, either being a single penguin, a couple, 3, or a large one. What makes things tricky is when it gets to 30 seconds, where 2 waves of penguins will jump off one after another, and at 20 seconds, where 3 waves of penguins will begin to jump off one after another. The good part here is that they alternate sides, so if you're on the edge after a wave has slid through, then the iceberg will soon switch to the other side with the new wave of penguins coming next. With how slippery this minigame is, your absolute best bet for survival is spamming the jump button. Specifically, jumping and then moving over and over. Jumping without having any direction held on the circle pad will cause all of your momentum to halt, which can potentially save you in dangerous situations. You could even be running one direction, then let go of your circle pad to jump and bam, no movement whatsoever. You can't even jump on your opponent's heads in this one, which means yours is safe too. Pair this with the pretty predictable penguin patterns and you'll practically play perfectly. Slip not. Slide as far as you can without slipping off the path via turning your 3DS. Yeah, this is not a circle pad minigame, and considering how slippery it is, and the fact that you increase with speed as the minigame goes on, and the fact that falling off means you are out of the minigame, makes this a stressful one. Thankfully, the devs don't really expect you to reach the end, which is why when you fall, your score is recorded, with whoever making it the furthest, even if they fall, the winner. The max score you can get here is 500 yards if you reach the end. This is absolutely one of those minigames that you get better at by doing, not really by theory. But if there's anything to say about it, you've got to prioritize small tilts with your 3DS left and right. Unless you make a horrible mistake in turning, you will not have to do a crazy sharp turn in this one, just careful, gradual ones along the path. Make sure that when you complete a turn that you straighten out so you don't just slide off in the direction you were going last. When the minigame first begins, you'll be in a straight line, which is fine because you can stay like this for a few seconds for free without needing to slide anywhere. Afterwards, you need to slide a little bit to the right and then straighten out, where you'll curve left slightly and a little more sharp before having to get ready for a right turn afterwards. Here is where you'll notice some speed up along with the path getting thinner. Straighten yourself out and do small slides to the right, and then prepare for what's arguably the hardest maneuver in the minigame, sliding left and then a sharp right without falling off at the end. You've got to straighten out or you're done for. These last few turns of their own wouldn't be a big deal if you were going slow, but because you're at the fastest speed here, their difficulty is heightened. Make your last few turns and reach the goal for an agonizing win. It's way more likely that your opponents will have fallen off much earlier than this, making a perfect victory not necessary most of the time. But hey, if you want to be cool and master this one to its full potential, then be my guest. Slow G, jump up from the platform to reach the goal as quickly as possible. The layout is the same every time. The environment being, space definitely throws a wrench into this one because man, you're floaty. Falling in this minigame is a death sentence because you've got to way a long time before your character touches the ground before retrying any jumps. Collision with opponents is annoying too. Just touching an opponent on the side will bump the both of you and kill any momentum you had. Jumping on opponents' heads can actually grant you some nice height in this one. But alas, I recommend against trying for it unless it's guaranteed. The number one thing you want to do here is minimize how long it takes you to fall onto each platform. You'll notice that if you tap A, then you'll jump a little bit, and if you hold it down, then you'll do a high leap. Now, unless the platform is really far away, you do not need to hold down A this long. Holding it down longer than a tap, but still shorter than the full press is ideal, but this is rather vague, which is why we'll be using these flames coming out of the bottom of the platforms as markers. When you perform a jump, release the A button as soon as your character's head reaches the bottom of the platform's flame. I'm going by Mario's head in this case, so it'll vary a little depending on which character you're playing. You'll see that when I release the A button, according to these flame indicators, that I'm landing exactly on the platform without much time wasted on waiting to fall onto them. Don't worry if it looks like you won't make it. Looks can be deceiving. You can be a little bit below the platform, but so long as you're pushing against it, what looks like a jump that wouldn't make it does. Unfortunately, after you scale the stationary platforms, you'll come across moving ones, where the flames are no longer pointed straight down all the time. Here is where you may have to extend your jump a bit, not just because your markers are gone, but also to give you some more leverage in landing on these moving platforms. It's these two last ones on each side that are really annoying. The top one can line up with the bottom one, making you want to do a jump around the corner to reach it, but you're much better off waiting for a more straightforward jump, and when you do, it's the first person to land on the top platform for the win. Slow glide. Aim for the balloons and pop as many as you can. Unlike a lot of other gyro minigames in this title, this one's pretty simple. You're just tilting the 3DS up and down, with the further you tilt being the faster you go in that direction. There is no going left or right. When you touch a balloon, you get a point. Balloons with the number 3 on them are, well, you guessed it, 4 points. Yeah, I'm just kidding, the 3. I needed to throw in a curveball because there's not much to say for this one, honestly. The challenge comes from how skilled you are at tilting the 3DS slightly up and down. You'll come across balloons that are still and ones that are in motion, but regardless of which ones you see, they'll be a little transparent so you can prepare to hit multiple balloons in a row with one smooth motion and earn multiple points. Just make sure you lock in for the 3-pointers or you'll likely end up losing to any opponents that didn't miss any. Spin and bear it. Choose a spot on the wheel and then give it a spin and hope you avoid the hammer. You choose whichever colors you want your spot to be at the beginning of the minigame by moving towards it and pressing A. The minigame will then randomly select a player to spin the roulette. The order of spinning the roulette will continue in player number order. When a player gets out, the next round will begin with one less space for players to select, and so on until all but one player have been eliminated. Now, you might be thinking, hey, I get to spin the roulette? Must mean there's a degree of control here, right? Well, for starters, you can't just do a tiny spin of the roulette to get what you want. You've got to do more than that. And before you start thinking to yourself that there's some mathematical calculation for a set distance and speed to get a certain position every time, let me just stop you right there to tell you that the result is predetermined. Yeah, I know, there's no word more deflating than the word predetermined in Mario Party, but that's how it is. You can spin the roulette slowly, same result. Quickly, same result. Clockwise, same result. Counterclockwise, same result. Wait until the timer runs out. For the game to spin it, you'll still get the same result. It doesn't matter. Fate was written before you even touch the pen. Spin the bubble. Rotate the figure in the bubble until it matches the image in the box. Here are the possible figures you can get in this minigame. First player to get it right on a round earns 9 points, second gets 6, third gets 3, and fourth gets zip. Rotating in this one is weird, like really weird, because it's not fluid at all. The hands move in a stop and go motion repeatedly, either along the x-axis or the y-axis, making it incredibly annoying for you to use your plot twist gyro controls to spin the bubble to match the image on the box. match the quirkiness of the minigame. When you go for a tilt on your 3DS, make it quick in the direction you want, then return to neutral. The images you have to match are pretty simple. They can be different 90-degree rotations of facing you, facing away, side profile, you get the idea. It's all about recognizing how many turns you are away from the bottom screen's image and turning your figure one at a time in order to land on it. Good luck. Squish you were here. Hide in the gaps between the walls to avoid being squished. When the minigame begins, the walls will be moving very slow to give you a chance to figure out how it all works. On this first collision, there will be 4 gaps, which is more than enough to find a safe spot. The next 2 collisions will have 3 gaps with the walls moving a little faster. The 2 collisions after that will have 2 gaps, and the one after that, at around 27 seconds or so, will have 1 gap with the walls moving at a quick speed. Now, you could just eyeball how far each pair of walls are from one another and make your decision on where to go from there, but there is a tried and true method to find the gap every time. When the walls reset, count up how many circles are on top of each pair. If you get 4, then that means those walls will collide. If you get 3, then that means those walls will have a gap. You don't even have to count up all the walls. You can prioritize just looking at the pairs that have a really short 1-circle wall. Any walls that form a gap will always have a 1-circle wall here before they start colliding. Eventually, you'll come across multiple pairs of walls that have 1 circle, in which case you'll need to verify that the other wall has 2 circles, which adds up to 3 circles and means safety. This is a very reliable strategy up until the last 10 seconds of the game, where the walls will retract and collide way too fast for you to find where the 3 circle pairs are. In this instance, you've got to use your intuition to stay safe. Body blocking here is not recommended unless you're willing to sacrifice yourself to make a big threat lose. Starring artist. Use your stylus to copy the constellations you see on the top screen as quickly as possible. There are 3 rounds, with whoever completing a round first earning 9 points, second gets 6, third gets 3, and fourth gets nothing. Here are all the possible constellations that can show up in this minigame. You'll notice that when you complete them, they'll show an image of a Mario enemy that it was based on. For some of them, you can complete the constellation no matter which star you begin on, but others, such as the Spike Top constellation, are not so nice. If you start anywhere but at the top where the spike is, then you'll have to lift your stylus and touch down again to make the final connection. This is why you should begin your constellations starting on these dead-end spots. There are constellations where you've got to lift your stylus at least once, like here where there are multiple dead ends. In this case, finish one dead end, then begin the rest of the constellation from the other dead end. It may not look like it at first glance, but the top screen and bottom screen have the exact same star arrangement and brightness, so you don't get confused on where to draw the constellations. The top screen will have a couple extra stars off to the left and right, due to the top screen being wider, but the actual play area will be the same, so don't get thrown off by that. Stretch run. Stretch the rubber band to launch your cart as far as possible without going over the edge. The closer you are to the edge, the more points you'll earn. The first round's point layout is 1, 2, 4, and 6, and the second round's is 1, 3, 6, and 9. The point zones will not change in size though. There are 5 different variations of this minigame that place you and your opponents at different distances from the boardwalk. This obviously affects how far you have to pull your rubber band to launch your cart for the max amount of points. So let's go over what the optimal stretch is for each variation using the bottom of the shadow of your cart and the lines on the white boardwalk. For no stripes at all, line your shadow up halfway past the second line. For 1 stripe, line your shadow up with the second line. For 2 stripes, line your shadow up a tiny bit over halfway past the first line. For 3 stripes, line your shadow up a quarter past the first line. This one's a little more difficult to line up, so if you want to play it safe, go a tiny bit higher than what you think you need. For 4 stripes, line your shadow up with the first line. The layout you get on the first round is the same one you'll get for the second round, so just rinse and repeat for a perfect score. Sub Trouble. Race to the finish in your submarine while avoiding rocks and barriers. The layout is the same every time. You and your opponents have no collision with one another since you're on different planes, so no worries there. But what you should worry about is touching literally anything. I don't care how parallel you are to any of these rocks. If you so much as graze a pixel, then you will get bumped away and stunned for half a second, losing precious time. Your controls are simple, up and down. You may expect said controls to be clunky since it's an underwater minigame, but they're actually quite responsive and react precisely as you want them to, which ironically might throw some players off who were expecting their submarines to float around a little bit in the direction they're going, due to it being a water minigame. To get to the goal the fastest, you want to minimize your turns as much as possible. When the minigame begins, you'll be going in a straight line. Do not change directions until you're forced to here, where you must go down a little bit, followed by heading up. Once you straighten out, you'll be given the option of going over a pillar or under. The most straightforward pathing here is under for both pillars, so that you're lined up to go through this tunnel without any other adjustments. You'll head down once more, and now whether you go up or down doesn't make a huge difference since the tunnel is in between the two routes, but you give yourself more space if you head up here. This is where the diverging paths end, and you've simply got to keep maneuvering upward through tighter spaces. If you're comfortably ahead of second place, then prioritize safety and stay in the middle. If you're losing, then try to make sure you're making minimal adjustments. Go in as many straight lines as you can. You'll make better distance this way, but you also run a higher risk of bumping, which is something you've got to take if you're behind. The distance you take by taking this entire recommended route will not be obvious at first, but if you and another player play perfectly and do different routes, you'll be clearly ahead by a few feet at the end. Tanks a lot. Destroy your opponent's tanks before they can destroy yours. There are many different arena variations, but they all have this same shape in the middle with a line of blocks and a line poking out along with 4 block formations and corners around it. This is a point-based minigame, not a survival one like Shell Shocked from Mario Party 2. You win by getting 3 shots off on other players. It can be 3 different players or even the same player 3 times in a row. The latter is unlikely though, because if you get hit, then you'll get temporarily knocked out of the game for a couple seconds and then respawn on the edge of the arena. Oh yeah, there's a mini-map by the way, and it actually does stuff. You can see where exactly all the players are at any given time, and whenever a player destroys a block via blasting it with a cannonball, the bricks will disappear from the map too. Destroying bricks like this should not be done willy-nilly, or else you might end up creating a weak spot for an opponent to take advantage of. Only do it if you've got an actionable plan in mind to surprise attack a foe. When a player is in your sights, fire away no matter how far away they are. Your cannonball can go the whole distance of the arena. If it makes contact with another player's cannonball, then they'll destroy one another, canceling each other out. If this happens far away, then you can move on if you'd like, but if you're close to your rival, then spam the A button to try and fire your next shot faster than them in hopes that you'll eventually get the hit. The only time you shouldn't be firing at a player is if they just respawned, since they'll have a few seconds of flashing invincibility. Overall, your top priority should be attempting to chain together multiple attacks on different players by sticking close to them with info from the minimap. Tap Dash. Match the character on the top screen by tapping the appropriate panel on the touchscreen as quickly as possible. There are 3 rounds. In every round, first place will get 9 points, second gets 6, third gets 3, and fourth gets 1. What you see is what you get. You're trying to recognize the enemy on the top of the screen as quickly as possible and tap that enemy's image on your bottom screen even quicker. The enemies on the bottom screen are scrambled each time you play, but their locations remain the same in between rounds. That can be helpful, but what is so much more is the fact that if you select the wrong enemy, you do not take any stun time. 0. That's right, this is one of the very few minigames where an incorrect response has no downside and you can continue guessing at a rapid speed until you get the right answer. Heck, you can start spam selecting random enemies before the one on the top screen even fully shows itself. Obviously, you should also be paying attention to which enemy appears and search for where it is afterwards, but just make sure that your hand is tapping around wildly while you do, since you may tap the correct one by accident. Tile Savvy. Slide the tiles to unscramble 3 pictures before your opponents can. There are 3 rounds. Whoever finishes all rounds first wins. Each puzzle is 3 by 3. Round 1's mushroom puzzle can always be completed in 2 moves. Round 2's fire flower puzzle can always be completed in 3 moves, and round 3's green shell puzzle can always be completed in 4 moves. You have to actually slide the tile pieces. Just tapping them is not enough. If you make a mistake at any point in the puzzle, then obviously this amount will be higher, but knowing the minimum amount of moves that each puzzle requires for completion can help you out on what your mindset should be for each one. Sadly, there are many different variations of each puzzle for each round, but I personally don't think these are difficult enough to warrant a bunch of memorization anyways. The first round especially, considering that the mushroom is round, so it's pretty straightforward. Or not straightforward? Which pieces need to go where. The second round also has the round part of the fire flower to help you out, but the stem comes in handy too. The third round is where you may get tripped up. Take the quickest moment to realize what your first piece to slide should be, and if you're correct, then the rest should follow fast, so just make sure you nail the first one. Top this. Decorate the cake with as many pieces of fruit as possible. There are 3 rounds, and players earn points each round depending on how many pieces of their fruit they've placed on each designated spot on a cake, indicated by the circles. There's a square cake, a circular cake, and a flower-shaped cake. Each of these cakes have 16 spots for toppings to go on, and each of them can show up in any round combination. They can each rotate either clockwise or counterclockwise. Round 1's cake will rotate slowly, round 2's cake will rotate faster, and round 3's cake will rotate even faster than that. When the minigame begins, quickly distribute your toppings onto the spots closest to you. Only try and place your toppings elsewhere if you either run out of spots close by, or you want to mess up a big threat in the game by taking part of their spots closest to them. The actual toppings in your container are not representative of what you can grab, so save yourself some time by always grabbing from the top part of the container. Tragic carpet ride. Dodge the Mattermouse and avoid falling off the carpet for as long as possible. You can fall off by dropping through any of the holes left behind by a Mattermouth, or by going off the edge of the carpet. The spot a Mattermouth made a hole in will fill back up with carpet after 3 seconds passes. You can see the trail of carpet slowly following the Mattermouth as it chomps through. Touching a Mattermouth will knock you away a little bit and grant you a second of invincibility. This isn't a bad outcome unless you touch one while a hole is behind you, so be wary. When the minigame begins, there will only be one Mattermouth to worry about, but when the timer hits 50 seconds, a second one will spawn, and a third at 40 seconds. They'll spawn in at the corners, so keep away from them when it's time. These guys can change direction whenever they want, making them unpredictable, but if you see one heading towards a corner, at least then you'll know a turn is coming. Don't be afraid of jumping across holes to more open spots, and by all means, don't be afraid of bumping into a Mattermouth if you know that you wouldn't be knocked into a hole. You'd much rather take the hit than panic and accidentally fall into the abyss. To make matters worse, you've got your foes to worry about who can really get in the way. Treat them as mini stage hazards and try to keep away from everything. Trounce and bounce. Bump your opponents out of the way and aim for the jump blocks as you fall. Do not move your character to the outer ridges of the play area. You'll end up missing the blocks since they're actually positioned closer to the middle than you might think. When the minigame begins, there are more than enough blocks for all the players to land on, so unless you end up fighting with someone over a particular spot, you should easily be able to scout out a block that no one's moving towards. You'll know exactly where you and other players are going to land via the shadows you cast. Pay most attention to your own shadow, obviously, and make sure it lines up with any of the blocks. As the minigame goes on, there will be fewer blocks available for you and the others to bounce on, flat out requiring you to bump them out of the way so that you can claim the block as your own. I recommend getting into position for the block as soon as possible. It's easier to maintain your spot than it is to take another player's. Do not wait until the last moment to make any big moves, since you'll find yourself getting bonked away without much recourse after that. Near the end of the minigame, there will only be one block left to fight over. Funny enough, multiple players can land on this block at the same time, but if this happens, then the game will keep respawning a single block in different positions until someone screws up. Same thing as before though, align yourself with the block quickly and angle your head towards your opponent and push against them if they try bumping into you and taking it for themselves. Truckin and Cluckin. Grab a chicken and try to hold on to it while it lays eggs. Tackle your opponents to steal their chickens. Regular chickens will give you 1 point per second held, and golden chickens will give you 2 points per second held. Regardless of which chicken you're holding, it'll fly off after 5 eggs are laid, meaning regular chickens will give a max of 5 points total and golden chickens will give a max of 10 points total. This amount does not reset if another player steals the chicken. When you're not holding a chicken, you'll have increased movement speed and can tackle, which will stun other players for a quick moment and steal a chicken if they were holding onto one. You'll also automatically pick up any chickens that are on the ground. When holding a chicken, your movement speed is reduced and you can't tackle. When the minigame begins, there will always be 2 chickens in the middle of the arena. If you were to just walk up to it normally, then you'd get immediately tackled and lose out on points. So the moment you get close to one, tackle towards it. You'll both pick it up and knock away any opponent that was going for it too. Once you've got it, run away. Your aim is to squeeze out as many points from this chicken as you can. If at any point you grab a chicken that has not laid any eggs, or has only laid 1 egg and it gets stolen from you, then try and steal it back. But if you've already gotten a couple eggs and then it gets stolen, then if you spend multiple seconds to get it back, you'll only get a few points, if even that, for your trouble. And since you can't drop a chicken you're holding, it's possible that of the new chickens that pop into the arena every now and then, one of them could be golden, which you won't be able to grab since you're holding on to a regular one. They are your top priority. Getting 2 points each second is crazy, and you should not let any other player get away with one, especially not a threat. When the minigame is close to ending, feel free to grab a chicken and head towards the furthest corner so that you can get just a couple more points away from the other players who won't have enough time to take it from you. Utter nonsense. Listen to the character's voice and then perform your best impression. Now this is a fun one. You and your opponents will hear a character's sound clip, and then you'll be given a countdown where you'll each do your impression of the sound clip at the same time as one another. The impression will be scored on a scale of 0 to 100, and whoever has the best score wins. The choiciest voice is an extra minigame that serves as a single-player version of this minigame with its own separate judge scoring system, but since the visuals for it are easier to grab and are plain nicer to look at than utter nonsense, we'll be viewing it instead. The same strategy should apply. These are all the possible characters that you may be asked to impersonate. Each of them have multiple possible sound clips that can pop up. I would love to tell you that the game has a sophisticated system that listens to the intonations of your voice to determine how accurate of an impression you do, but through repeated testing, I found that the main factor that repeatedly got me the max score was matching the average volume for the given sound clip. Take this Wario one for example. Let's go. Instead of copying him, if you just make a long noise that matches the average volume of the clip, then you'll get full marks. Some clips will be a little quieter, meaning your long noise should be quieter as well. All that being said, what I've just described is the play lame win game method, and despite it being optimal, I move for it to be submitted under the DNUB INTF Mario Party Act, also known as the Do Not Use Because It's Not That Fun Mario Party Act. Instead, try to actually imitate the voice. Xylophone Home. Tap the keys in time with the musical notes. Your goal is to tap one of the respective keys on your touchscreen whenever a note lands on them. If you're early or late on a note, then you'll get 1 point, but if your timing is spot on, then you'll get 2 points. The same song is played every time, making this an easy one to practice, but also a fun one because the song that plays is an 8-bit rendition of the main Mario theme, but if you play it well, then it'll transition into a seaside beach version, and if you continue to play well, then it'll bring out the orchestra. If you play poorly during either version, then it'll transition back to the 8-bit one, which means you'll be able to essentially hear how well you're doing, but don't let it throw you off. Just focus on hitting the keys the moment a note lands on each one. Mario Party Island Tour certainly threw a lot of different ideas at the wall, and if there's one thing I can respect, it's the fact that it just did not care what conventions it broke. Do I have a preference for more complex board play and strategy? Of course, but that doesn't mean every entry has to have that for me to enjoy myself. Sometimes it's just good fun to boot up a round of Rocket Road and win the game in a few measly turns, or deal with the ridiculousness of Banzai Bill's Mad Mountain. I could pick apart this game to death for being simple all the livelong day, but since when does being simple have to mean bad? Sometimes I'd rather eat a slice of bread instead of a sandwich. It just comes down to what I'm feeling in the moment. I like having options, and this game fills that hole for me nicely, so I'm grateful. Speaking of grateful, thanks so much for watching, thank you so much to all of the members of this channel, and thanks so much to everyone that helped provide information for this video, all of which can be found in the description. Special shout out again to Aerozotic for the Shy Guys Shuffle City footage, and Anthony2987 for providing a large bulk of advice. I'll see you next time when we cover Mario Party 10.